Morning, Charlotte. How are you?
Hi, Kim. Good morning. I'm fine, thank you.
Yes, indeed. Good to see you. How was your weekend?
It was great. How about yours?
It was splendid.
Great.
It's good to see you here at this diaries dissemination event organized by Microsave and funded by the Gates Foundation. Really, really excited to be part of this event. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts?
Great. Within Kenya's borders and outside the perimeter of the country's jurisdiction, WMSCs, particularly those ones who operate within the open air and cross-border towns, they face a unique set of challenges. What are their convictions about money? Why do they act the way they do, especially when it comes to financial management in the digital age? What are their future aspirations? One thing is undeniable, Kim. Every working moment presents a woman trader with an opportunity to either be the hunter or the hunted.
You're absolutely right. And when you think of women in cross-border trade or in open markets, the scenario is the same. I'm sure we can all think about your favorite woman in toy who sells your clothes or where you go to buy your fruit. It's just really challenging that they have to face so many hurdles. I don't know if you remember when we were in Funyula, we met this lady, Mary. She has a husband and 2 kids. They come from a low-income home, and she has to struggle to make ends meet. Her husband is a driver, and so he crosses the border every other week to go ferry cement. And in that up and down, he's able to carry some fish, which Mary can then sell in the market. So she does that about 4 times a week. And it's hard. She's eking out a living. She's trying to do the best she can. But, times are tough.
Great. I'm curious about Mary's choices. Why does she have to travel all the way to Uganda 4 times a month to buy fish, which she could find within the country? And also, why not find a trusted supplier that she could, engage from Uganda if she has to then still get her fish from Uganda and then get to pay digitally? In that, she gets to save time and find more opportunities to engage with her children and also save herself the hassle of finding a safe means of transport.
Yeah, it's not easy, and it's a good question. I mean, part of the challenge is that she's informal, so she's worried that, she can't really take her business to that next level that she'd like to. But then also her business is anchored on relationships. So she's leveraging her husband. Her husband's cousin is the person who she buys fish from. So there's a lot of internal relationships that she's using to grow her business. But we need to find ways to help her scale.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. A very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for finding time to join us in this occasion of dissemination of insights from our financial diaries. My name is Charlotte Uching, and I am from the Banking and Financial Services team at Microsave, and my co-host is...
Morning, everyone. I am Kim, also with Microsave, part of the Banking and Financial Services team. It is great to have all of you here. Please feel at home. We will be disseminating results from our financial diary study. We'll analyze over 6,000 transactions, and that's what we'll be capturing and sharing with you here.
Indeed, this is an action research program that has been commissioned by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with an objective to resolve some of the constraints that these women that we've talked to you about, they face, and also provide to you some of the opportunities that exist within the digital and financial services that could actually be exposed to these women. So part of our collaborative approach, is very inclusive, working with the women in the open air and cross-border traders together with the financial service providers to diagnose the problem that these women face and also develop solutions based on our diagnosis. Kim, I know that we have about 3 outcomes in this action research program.
Yes, we do. So the first thing is we want to really understand women like Mary. What makes them tick, what makes them thrive, what works for them, what's not working for them. So the first thing is really just about unlocking that understanding. And then 2, with the support of our action research partners and the financial sector players in the room, to really design products and services that can help women like Mary scale their businesses, move from being informal to formal and thrive, and maybe even become cross-border entrepreneurs themselves. The third one is we want to deliver these solutions at scale, which means leveraging drivers to bring down costs, which means digital, which means analyzing data, which really means getting at the heart of what is driving behavior and changing that for good.
Great indeed. Like I've said before, this program has been commissioned by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we've been working very closely with a lady called Amani Mbale. She's the Senior Program Manager based in Washington, D.C. for the East Africa program, and she would have really loved to be with us today. However, she still found a way to join us. We will be playing a recorded message from Amani Mbale, and she will be speaking to us on the importance of gender-centric financial product design for women-owned micro and small enterprises. Media team, take it away.
Of the economy. We know that if financial services can be affordable, relevant, and responsive to women in the real economy, then they will reach others, they will reach men, and they will build economic growth, they will strengthen resilience, and we will have an amplification of financial health. And how does this tie in to East Africa? Well, the East African economies are very integrated, especially the one in Kenya. It has reach into Uganda, into Tanzania, in Rwanda and Burundi. And so we've taken the approach of seeking to serve women in the productive economy, in the real economy, across the region, because our thesis and our hypothesis has been proven that when you invest in women and you support women's enterprise, that the dividends are not only to herself, but also to her household and to her community. We have focused on action research because we know that when products and services are designed with the users in mind, with their economic cycles, their business cycles, their cash flows in mind, then they become relevant to them. We also want to use market research in an effort to understand what type of pricing would make sense for these consumers. Action research allows us and providers to have early insights as to what can make products and services, marketing, and the basic offering successful to the target group that we are trying to serve. Customer centricity is key in order to advance women's financial inclusion, because oftentimes services are not designed with women in mind. They are not intentional. In fact, they're gender blind. We seek to address this gap in service provision by improving the quality of services for women. And part of that quality relates around relevance, pricing, placing, and all of the attributes that a successful product has. We feel that we are getting closer to amplifying women's financial inclusion when we take a customer-centric approach from the onset, and also that solutions are designed to scale. This is also very important for private sector actors to enjoy the sustainability of service provision, and for women to enjoy the reliability of a sustainable service. Thought leadership and partnership are key to our approach in East Africa writ large. We know that in order to serve women effectively in the real economy, they are going to need more than financial services. They're going to need business development services. They're going to need market information. They're going to need make sure that policies and trade routes are cleared for them in order to transact and to trade. And so in order for us to provide an integrated and a holistic solution to women in the real economy, we have to work in partnership with others who are providing those complementary services. And what we offer our partners, what we offer the financial services providers that we work with is thought leadership. We happily fund the research that informs the way forward in a way that complements our partners, in a way that adds value to not only our partners, but also to the women that we seek to support. And therefore, thought leadership and partnership is really a cross-cutting theme. It's an approach we use whether we're dealing with public or private sector or associations. And it is going to be part of our DNA in East Africa for the time being. We are very interested not only in scale and sustainability, but in relevance, affordability. And we're interested in partnering with institutions who share our strategic vision. We are not interested in working with people who we're dragging along, but rather our partnership should be advancing the core mandate of the institution itself, so that this is a value add not only to our strategy, but to the provider strategy or to a government strategy. So we are looking for synchronicity and alignment in our strategic endeavors, and we're looking for a true partnership where each player brings their value add to the table. And I think together we can really help make a difference and help East Africa recover from the pandemic, the economic shutdowns of the COVID-19 pandemic, and become a strong region in Africa.
Great, thank you, media team. Really powerful words from Amani there. I struggled to even try and recap, just really, really powerful. But the one thing that I want to capture, it's on your program, and I'd love you to turn your attention there. On the back is a quote that I'll just read out for the sake of the team that's online. The financial inclusion team at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation believes that if financial services can be affordable, relevant, and responsive to women in the real economy, then they will reach others, and they will reach men, and they will build economic growth and strengthen resilience, and we will have an amplification of financial health. I think that's really what we're trying to achieve here, and really excited about being with all of you and walking this journey together. So again, like I said, welcome. We're very excited to have all of you here. You can turn your programs over to the other side. This is our agenda for the day. I would be remiss if I didn't say where the facilities are, just in case folks get lost. If you pop out of this room and take a right, like you're coming towards the entrance, you will see a big sign that says cloakroom. That's where the men's and the women's are. For the team that's online, I'm sure you know your facilities around where you are, so nothing to talk about there. The second thing is we have a slight change in the program. So our keynote address was meant to be delivered by Dennis Njau, but he's not here yet. And so I will ask that my colleague Thomas get himself ready and get ready to present the next part of the program. Thank you, and as I said, feel free and welcome. Oh, just before I forget to mention as well, the main screen over here is where you should be focusing for the main content of the event. On the side, we will capture and show you the folks who are connecting online, so then we feel like we're all together in the same place. Thank you. Thomas.
Good morning, everyone. By introduction, my name is Thomas Murai. I'm part of the Digital Financial Services team at Microsoft. So today, we want to give you a glimpse of the traders that we've been talking to. The research is based on open air market and cross-border traders. And today, we brought them here so that you could get firsthand the information that we have been collecting, and also for them just to share their insights in terms of the type of business, the types of challenges that they face, and just to give you a perspective of what is happening. So without much further ado, I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves. So Kim, you could help me with the mic? Okay. I lost you. So they'll just give a brief introduction, and then I'll call two of them to come.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alice Lemomo from Namanga, a cross-border trader. I deal with beadwork.
Thank you, Alice.
Pleasure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Damon Mohamud, cross-border trader from Namanga. I deal with green grocery.
Morning, everyone. My name is Anastasia Ndena from Open Hair Market, Kikomba. I make drums and the other curios, like carvings. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Richard Commando from Open Yam Traders at Kikomba. I make handcrafts. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Otieno. I'm an online trader. I deal with furniture.
Okay, thank you. So let's just introduce the whole aspect of open air trade and cross-border traders. So Kenya has about 5.04 million business owners. Out of that, majority of them, 60% deal in wholesale and retail trade, including repairs, about 12% in agriculture, forest and fishery, and then about 10% in services, and then the rest as follow. So out of this, about 3.02 million out of the 5.04 deal in wholesale and retail trade. So out of this 2.02 million, which is the majority of the segment, are actually female business owners. So 32% operate from open air markets. Around 30 to 40% of Africa's trade is informal cross-border trade. So that is the interest of this study. So trying to see the open air market trade and cross-border trade and what kind of challenges and how can they be supported to grow. And our findings are from FinAccess. The general findings are from FinAccess, so what informed now the research. And then in terms of open air market trade, so what are they? So these are traders that have a fixed set of customers and some flying customers, what you call walk-in customers. They accept both cash and payments in M-Pesa. They generally lack a license, so most of them don't operate with a license. They prefer to evade the authorities or pay a temporary fee than get a permanent license. So getting the permits means they have to close the business and make regular visits to the county government offices to get the license. Then for cross-border traders, they either have customers across the border, like in Kenya, we'll have most of them between Uganda and Tanzania. So it's either they have the customers across or they have the suppliers across the border. So they need to manage multiple currencies because they have traders, they have customers on either side of the border, so they have to manage the multiple currencies. Then some have institutional clients. For this one, they have to pay through the bank and mostly through checks. Then most have some form of license for the cross-border traders. So I'd like to introduce on stage Anne Thenya, who is an open air market trader from Gikomba, and Alice Lemomo. We'll be engaging them further in terms of the challenges. So Anne and Alice, please come on stage. Let's encourage them as they come. Okay. Have a seat. Okay, so these are representing the two segments that we are studying. Anne Thenya is an open air market trader. She's on our right. And then followed by Alice, who is a cross-border trader from Namanga. So Anne, if I could start with you. Maybe just tell us what is your business, what do you trade in?
Okay, thank you. I make drums, then I sell to local tourists or local independents. So I'm at Kikomba, Lam Road. I started my business in 1988. So I'm still going on. There is challenges like mostly finance. I have challenge in finance, because it is not easy to be given a loan by a bank. So I really struggle, then I move on. I'm a mother of 3. I started my business with a little money, 60 bob. I was brought in Nairobi by my sister-in-law, because my husband had some problems with me. So my sister-in-law brought me into Nairobi. Then I was working at Curio. So I bought some skins from her money. She gave me 60 bob. Then I started my business. So by so doing, I got some customers, local ones. Then afterwards, I got like one Kanban. With now, I am dealing with one Kanban called African Heritage. I make for them, then after I deliver, then they pay. So I'm just moving with them. But it is hard, because sometimes they says, you deliver, then we pay, and I don't have enough money. So I used to borrow somebody, or I go to Okay, I'm sorry. Saa ingine nikikosa pesa naendanga kwa watu wa kukopesha, kwa sababu saa ingine wanasema deliver ndio tukulipe, alafu ni kasi kubwa. So naenda kwa mtu namwambia nikopeshe hii, nitalipa na interest, na ni challenge, kwa sababu kama umepewa muda 2 months utang'ang'ana, alafu hiyo pesa iko na interest kubwa, kwa sababu nalipa mtu, sio bank. Ukichukua 1,000 anaweza kuambia 50 every day, so unaona ni expensive. So kuna challenges. So ningepata either bank ama serikali wani support, ningefurahia, because ni kazi mzuri, nimeizoea, imenisomeshea watoto, ndio nakula, na sitegemei mtu sahi, tegemea hiyo kazi na Mungu. So kama serikali ama bank fulani wanaweza nipea support, naweza fanya vizuri kuliko vile nimefanya. So ningeomba serikali pia, kwa sababu kazi yetu ni ya tourist, pia exhibition ikipatikana naitwa ndio ni grow, kwa sababu nikiwa pale kwa exhibition nitapata new customers, either international ama ya Kenya, nita improve. So mimi na kilio changu kwa serikali ni finance. Kama naweza pata pesa, nifanye nikirudisha, nitafanya vizuri na nitainua wengi, kwa sababu kuna wale pia wanafanya kwangu, hata kama ni piecework na walipa kidogo. So nikiinuka na wao pia nitawainua, nitawalipa vizuri, pia wao wainue familia zao.
Thank you, Anne, for that. So
Thomas, let me try and attempt with my limited Swahili to translate at least the main things that have been said for those who might not follow the lingua franca. So she borrows money. Oh, sorry. I'm told to get into the shot, so let me try. So Anne borrows money and pays within miezi mbili, so within 2 months.
Yeah.
That's not easy, and she has to obtain that from informal sources. And of course, you can fill in there who you think those informal sources could be. As well, she is looking to get better sources of credit, because then if she can do that and expand her business, there's an opportunity for her to not only lift her own business up, but also carry people along with her for the journey.
Thank you. I think one point to emphasize, she said she borrows 1,000 shillings, Kenya shillings, and pays 50 shillings per day. So you can calculate that per month, how much it means in terms of the interest that the informal sources charge her. I think also as a need, she pointed the issue of market linkage in terms of if the government could basically involve them in terms of the exhibitions, so that now she can increase her customer base. So I think that's from Anne. Maybe just Anne, just one follow-up question. You said you have employees. How many employees do you have?
Okay, like now, today I have 2. I've left 2 at my work. So wakati kazi ni mingi ama wakati naharakisha, kama saa hii order sasa inaenda ku expire, nachukuanga wengi, although si ati nawalipa pesa mingi. Wewe unashika hapa na kulipa hii, wewe unashika hapa na kulipa hii. At the end of the day unapata nimefanya na wengi, but sijawalipa vizuri kwa sababu bado niko chini.
Okay.
But ningekuwa na source ya pesa, ningeajiri hata permanent, kwa sababu saa ingine inakuja na approach mmoja ananiambia niko busy pale, na approach mwingine ananiambia niko busy pale. Unaona, at the end of the day sijapata fundi, so mpaka kesho. So pesa ndio shida. Ningekuwa na pesa mzuri, kwa sababu niko na customers, but wengine ukuja na wachukulia kwa wenyewe, kwa sababu unaweza nipa order na useme sina pesa, fanya nitakuja. So unajua sitakopa ile pesa ya ule mtu, kwa sababu nayo ni a lot of pesa. Kwa sababu kichukua, tuseme umechukua 10,000, pande utakuwa unalipa 500, na ukikosa ni shida. Mnang'ang'ana hata anaweza kuchotea. Unaona, so unaanza bibaya na hiyo business haitaenda far. So ningeomba tu hata wenzangu wenye tunafanya na wao, kama kuna vile tunaweza saidika, tusaidiwe, either serikali ama bank. Wakijitolea tutafanya na tulipe tukipewa, kwa sababu najua bank huwezi linganisha na binafsi. Ya mtu binafsi itakuwa expensive, lakini ya bank kuna ile interest watakuambia, na msikizane vizuri, ufanye ukilipa. Unajua kutolipa ndio mbaya, lakini kama unalipa actually hakuna shida. Nikipata order nikimbia bank na niko na uwezo, ama nilie serikali na waniambie pesa ndio hiyo fanya, na ifanya haraka kuliko vile nafanyanga. So challenge ni pesa. Vile ingine before nikianza nilikuwa naona tunadharaulilwa sana. Wamama naona tu tunaonekana ni kama hatuna haki ya kufanya kazi, but siku hizi fenye ninaendelea na kupata experience, naona tu tuko equal na wanaume wenye tunafanya na wao. Hata tukipata pesa, wamama tunaweza fanya mzuri kuliko vile tulianza, kwa sababu unaingia tu na uoga, ukishindwa nitamake, na mimi ni mama. Unaona saa ingine wanakudharau, wanaweza ambia fundi pana wachana na mama, kuja kwangu, kuja unifanyie. Lakini siku hizi venye nimeendelea tu na ku experience, ninaona tu tuko sawa. Hata saa ingine ukiwa na pesa wanaacha kule kwa wazee, wanakuja kwako, unafanya na unawalipa. Mbola ukue transparent. Kama ulipi, ndio sasa shida inaweza tokelezea pale. Lakini kama unalipa, mtu hawezi kosa kufanya ati kwa sababu wewe ni mwanamke ama wewe ni mama. saa hii ni at least.
So, thank you, Anne. So just to translate quickly, she mentioned that she has 2 staff, and she has regular casual staff that she engages as she gets the orders from the customers. So if she was to get financing, then she can be able to expand her business and even get permanent staff to run the business. Among the challenges she's mentioned is that in terms of societal norms, women consider that they cannot do the work well. So even in terms of getting the supplies, sometimes it's discriminatory to women. So men get preferential treatment in terms of getting the supplies. So we'll move to Alice. Alice is a cross-border trader. So Alice, you could tell us your type of business, who are your customers?
Okay, mimi ndazungumza kwa lugha ya Kiswahili. Jinsi nilivyoanza kusema, mimi naitwa Alice Lemomo, natoka upande wa Kenya. Nafanya biashara ya ushanga. Nimefanya biashara hiyo kwa miaka. Nilianza na 19 years kwa sababu ya kupata changamoto ya kukosa school fees. Wakati nilikosa school fees, nikakutana na rafiki yangu mmoja, akaniambia unaweza anza hii biashara, ni kwa sababu haina capital kubwa. Akanipa 2000 shillings, nikanunua beads. Hapo ndipo nilianza biashara yangu. Na kwa kweli tumepitia changamoto mingi katika hiyo biashara tukiwa katika mipaka. Ni kwa sababu kitu ya kwanza hatuna soko. Tuna deal na tourist, local na wengine, lakini hatuna soko kabisa. Changamoto nyingine ni kuwa hatuna skills ya kutengeneza hizo products zetu. Mara kwa mara tunaona watu wanapelekwa kupelekwa kwa workshop kufundishwa, lakini sisi hatujapata hizo nafasi za kupelekwa kufundishwa kutengeneza hizo bidhaa. Na pia watu wanapelekwa kwa exhibition, tunasikia tu watu wamepelekwa kwa exhibition, sisi hatujapelekwa kwa hizo exhibition. Na pia tuna changamoto ya capital. Ni kwa sababu unakuta saa zingine unamteja amekupa order kubwa lakini hauna capital. Na pia kuna changamoto zingine tunapitia kama cross border traders. Kuna watu wengine wako na lack of information ya cross border trade. Wengine hawajapata kuwa na ule uelewa ya kufanya biashara mipakani, hawajui ile procedure ya kufanya biashara mpakani. Wengine bado wanatumia zile panya routes, ambapo wengine wanaenda to the loss kwa sababu hawajaelewa jinsi ya kutumia mpaka. Ingawaje bado wanaendelea kuelimishwa, lakini bado kuna wengine wanaendelea kutumia tu hizo panya routes. Ni kwa sababu ya taxes. Taxes za Kenya ziko juu sana. Inafaa ziangalie hawa wafanyabiashara wadogo ndiposa waweze kusaidika. Wakipitia labda katika mipaka na labda gunia 2 ya mahindi, gunia 3 ya mahindi, wanaweza kusaidika. Ni kwa sababu ushuru iko juu sana. Wanafaa kuangalia hawa kina mama jinsi watakapoimarika. Ni kwa sababu kuna hii kuempower trade. Hiyo ni njia moja ya kuempower trade na pia kuempower the women. Ni kwa sababu unakuta wamama wengi labda wanataka kufanya biashara, lakini wana ile uoga. Labda nikienda pale watachukua mtaji wangu, labda anakamtaji kidogo, labda amechukua pesa kwa chama, labda amechukua pesa kwa bank kidogo. Sasa anaona akienda pale labda ile faida kidogo angepata katika ile biashara yake yote itaenda katika ushuru. Kwa hivyo tuningependa iangaliwe mambo ushuru, ni kwa sababu ushuru iko juu sana. Na pia upande mwingine tuangaliwe pia wakati tunapoa hizi loans, kwa sababu interest pia za bank unakuta ziko juu. Ndio maana unakuta kina mama wanakuwa na hizi chama. At least unaweza kopa shilingi 1500 unarudisha na interest kidogo. Na pia kama kuna labda NGOs wanaweza jitokeza kusaidia kina mama kuboost biashara zao. Ni kwa sababu tulipitia changamoto wakati wa COVID. Wengi walirejea manyumbani, wamefunga biashara zao wakati wa COVID. Wengi walikuwa na loans, hata bado wengine bado wanadaiwa hizo loans zao, wameshindwa kujimudu kulipa. Ni kwa sababu biashara zao walifunga. Na bank haitaki kuelewa ulifunga biashara, lazima urejeshe pesa zao. Na upande mwingine pia ni changamoto nyingine pia tuko naye katika mpaka wa Namanga. Kuna hii implementation ya laws. Kama saa hii tukiwa hapa, kuna lori za mahindi zimezuiliwa kuingia upande wa Kenya. Wamesema mahindi haifai kutoka Tanzania. Na hizo mahindi zimeshatoka Tanzania, ziko kwa boda tayari. Sasa huyu mteja atafanya nini? Na wakati labda wengi wanatumia loans kununua hizi mahindi. Saa hii mahindi ziko hapo kwa boda. Sasa hii mahindi zitaenda wapi? Hiyo ni changamoto kubwa sana. Inafaa serikali waingilie kati. Saa zile wanataka kuweka sheria, wanaambia kwanza wafanyi biashara, hii mwezi msilete mahindi ni kwa sababu kuna sheria 1 2 3. Ni kwa sababu wafanyi biashara wanaenda kupoteza mali zao kutokana na hizo implementation ya hizo sheria zao. Wanafaa wawe wanaambia wafanyi biashara, ni kwa sababu wafanyi biashara kwa kweli wanaangamia kwa hizo nini wanalete hizo sheria zao wanalete. Kitu ingine pia ingefaa watu waendelee kuelimishwa jinsi ya kufanya ya kuweka records. Ni kwa sababu hiyo ni changamoto ingine wafanyi biashara wanaingia, kwa sababu hawana ile uelewa ya kuweka records katika biashara zao. Unakuta mtu labda amekopa pesa, ameweka hapa, amekopa pesa, ameweka hapa, hajafanya kwanza ile mahesabu ya kufanya hii ya kuchukua hii loans. Tuseme kwa mfano sasa umeenda umechukua loan ya 100,000, umeenda umeingiza yote kwa biashara, au umefanya kwanza utafiti wa ile biashara unataka kufanya. Kwa hivyo wewe unaweza tu ingia kichwa katika ile biashara, na wakati hujafanya kwanza utafiti wa ile biashara. Kwa hivyo ingeweza pia watu wangeweza kuelimishwa zaidi jinsi ya kupanga pesa zao, jinsi ya kufanya survey kwanza biashara kabla hujaanza biashara. Changamoto ingine tuko naye pia ni ya transport. Unakuta pia ukitaka kuingiza mzigo, transport sasa iko juu sana, juu mafuta iko juu. Kwa hivyo pia serikali wangeweza kuangalia jinsi hii mafuta itashuka bei, ni kwa sababu mafuta ndio inamaliza sasa hivi wafanyi biashara wengi. Kila kitu sasa hivi ukitaka kusafirisha mafuta iko juu. Kwa hivyo hata kama una pesa kidogo unataka kufanya naye biashara, huwezi fanya hii biashara kwa sababu kila kitu imepanda. Kwa hivyo vitu zingine kama hizo inafaa serikali wanakaa chini jinsi ya kuinua ya kumnufaisha mfanyi biashara. Ni kwa sababu leo hii tunaweza kaa kwa vikao kama hii na hakuna manufaa wafanyi biashara wanapata. Tunafaa tukikaa vikao kama hizi tunafuatilia hizo changamoto, jinsi hawa wafanyi biashara wadogo wataimarika. Ni kwa sababu leo hii huyu mama ana watoto pale, ana familia ingine pale wanamtegemea, ana kabiashara kake pale kidogo. Unakuta ile kafaida kidogo anapata katika ile biashara yake yote inaishilia katika ulezi wa watoto. Unakuta hata wengine hata hawezi enda shuleni kwa sababu ya uchumi iko juu sana. Kwa hivyo ningependa kuomba kama kuna NGOs wanaweza tokea wasaidie wamama wafanyi biashara wadogo mipakani, ama kuboost hata hizo biashara zao, hata kuongezea skills ya kufanya hii biashara. Ni kwa sababu wengine wanaangamia kwa kukosa hizo skills ya kufanya biashara. Unaweza kuta labda mimi ninaweza tengeneza kitu kama hii, labda sijatengeneza jinsi inavyotakiwa. Inatakiwa pia tupelekwe mahali tunaweza boresha bidhaa zetu, tupate soko, tupelekwe kwa exhibition, tupelekwe hata kufundishwa jinsi utakavyoongeza value kwa hizo vitu zako. Ni hayo tu.
Asante. Thank you, Alice, for those insights. So just to recap and quickly, so she started her business at the age of 19. A lack of school fees is what drove her to start the business of beadwork. She started with Kenya shillings 2,000. Some of the challenges is lack of adequate market, because they depend mostly on tourists. And then lack of skills to make the products, because it's a craft, so it needs a bit of skill to learn. So they don't have enough skills to do that. And then in terms of capital, whenever they get a large order, capital is a challenge. And then lack of information, and this one ties to business advisory, how to run a business, what kind of expenses do you incur, and how to manage these expenses. Then because of the cross-border trade, most of them rely on informal, unofficial routes, what they call panya routes, because they want to evade the high taxes at the customs points. So they mostly rely on the unofficial routes. And then taxes are high in terms of, especially she mentioned Kenya. So taxes, when you're bringing goods back into Kenya, the taxes are a bit high. Then the loans from financial service providers, current interest is high. So most of them rely on chamas, the informal groups. And then for the currently, she mentioned a case where there are traders who have brought in maize from Tanzania, but it's currently stuck at the border because the government banned import of maize. So those are some of the challenges she has mentioned. Other than that, high transport costs, And for the women, they have to balance between home care duties and also the business. So a lot of priority goes into the home care duties and as opposed to running the business. So they have to balance their cash flows in terms of that. So I think those wonderful insights we've got from our traders. Thank you very much for coming. Just to mention Kivuitu, is Kivuitu in the room? Kivuitu has been coordinating them from, a good partner of ours. So thank you very much. You can take your seats. Let's appreciate them. So thank you. I'll hand the program back to Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Thomas. We can give Anne and Alice another round of applause, please. Thank you, Thomas, as well. Right. One thing we would like to just highlight to you this morning, when we look at this group of women, the women who operate within the open-air markets and in the cross-border markets, one thing stands out, especially from the statistics that we managed to garner for the period of time we've been doing this program, that the usage of DFS among women in these markets is very low. And so we asked ourselves, is it a demand-side problem or a supply-side problem? And like you've rightly seen, really, it's both a demand-side problem and a supply-side problem. Quick recap, 3 things that stand out as top 3 priorities for these women is convenience and speed when it comes to the usage of DFS. And now, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Rahul Chatterjee, who is the senior manager in our data and insights team, to just give us a few insights to bring us into the world of the women who operate within the open air and cross-border towns. What are some of their constraints, challenges, and possibly for the financial providers seated here today? I do know there are great opportunities for collaboration to work and support these women greatly. Over to you, Rahul.
Hello. Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Charlotte. Hello, everyone. My name is Rahul, and I'm going to take you through what is this research is all about and some of the insights that we have unpacked from this research till now. So first, this slide, we are talking about what is a financial diaries research. So it's an innovative research methodology where we track the daily financial transactions of people to understand how do they manage their money. And we also unpack how exactly they do transact with various different channels, various different sources, and what is the implication of this on their life. Financial diaries research was invented to unpack these things which were not very clear. Because see, if you go for a one-time survey, you will know what is the average of average income or expenditure of the people at any point of time. However, things change, right? So there are a lot of people who are sometimes poor. They are not poor throughout, but poverty hits them at certain points of time. And there are effect of seasonality and various external events, which we will see soon. So one-time research actually is not a great tool to capture these nuances, which a financial diaries kind of research can do by tracking their daily financial life over a long period of time, say 1 year. Besides doing this for a popular research, we can also use it for impact evaluations. And this is also a very effective tool to instigate behavioral change in terms of managing finances. How? Because this, if we, like we have seen in from field, that this kind of financial diaries research is the first introduction to bookkeeping exercises for many of the micro enterprises. This is the first time they are formally recording their transaction, and we have we are very happy to tell you that they see that this is actually very helpful to them to actually understand they do need to do savings and other things. So what exactly we are collecting? We are collecting daily data on the income that they are earning, their business related expenses, their personal expenses, the savings that they are depositing, that they are withdrawing, any loan that they are taking, any loan that they are giving, and the loan amount that they are repaying. calling diarists, who are the open air market traders and the cross-border traders. We have given them a printed format, which you can see here. This is just a photo of one of the actual diaries that we have given the printed format, where they are actually recording their daily transaction. And we have a field researcher with the help of our partner Dalberg, who are helping us to conduct the field research. So these field researchers go to the diarist on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So initially they started on a weekly basis and then on a bi-weekly basis. They check these diaries. They see if they ask if they have any questions or any clarification that they need. And then they digitize this data using an in-house app that MSC has developed, which is called a DATIN, Data and Insights. So using this app, we digitalize this data. And then our MSC's data team checks that data on a concurrent manner, and we prepare a data query sheet that we send back to the field. And if we have any query related to the data, if there are some values which are too high or too low, or there are missing values, so we'll try to basically understand what exactly happens behind those numbers. This is a little about the sample. So we conducted this research in 2 phases. Phase 1, which was conducted from April to May this year, we had a sample of 100 diarists, 100 open air market and cross-border traders together. And we conducted a detailed financial and general profile of them. And then we tracked their daily financial data for a period of 3 weeks to pilot this whole research and to understand what is happening. Then we selected a subsample of 30 diarists, and we are continuing with their daily data collection through diaries for a period of 1 year. We have 7 research locations, 3 specifically for cross-border traders, which is Kajiado, Busia, and Tatia Taveta, where we have the cross-border areas, and we have 4 open air markets in Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, and Meru. So this is a glimpse in the sample. So we have around in the current diaries of 30, we have around 63% of cross-border traders and 37% of open air market traders. And we have both women and men sample, because to understand the gender nuances, we need to capture the whole gamut. So out of this 30, we have around 78% women and 22% men. So now I will take you through the key insights that we have got so far. So we have actually divided it into 3 parts. First, we will go a little deep on about the open air market and cross-border traders, what they're doing, what the challenges that they're facing. Of course, which I must say will be the mere repetition of what we have already heard from first hand. So, but I will quickly try to capture that. Then we will try to unpack their financial life in a much more nuanced manner. And then we'll try to answer a question: are these a monolithic group? They are just one segment, or there are various subsegments or other things among them? Let's see. So this is, we are saying that women in open air market and cross-border traders, they are very significantly different from each other in terms of especially their business economics, and there are region-wise difference. In terms of business economics, you see the first line is, so here we are presenting 4 weeks of data, the last 4 weeks, and of these 30 diarists. The light blue one is for the open air market traders, and the dark blue one is for the cross-border traders. As you can see, in terms of net income, by net income, we are saying their sales revenue minus their business-related expenses. Business-related expenses, that includes stock, buying stock, transport, paying rent for the business premises, etc. So you can see the net income of the open air market traders is a little higher than what we can see from the cross-border traders. And this throughout. But you can also see a kind of a decreasing trend, right? And so because of that, so week 3 was the election week here, and the week 4 was the aftermath of the election, when there were some disturbance going on. So that kind of can see the decrease, and which you can very clearly see this income is quite volatile. There are ups, there are downs, there are spikes, there are dips. And if you see the location-wise differences, there also exist a lot of variation. If you see the open air market traders, they who are in Nairobi are much bigger than their counterparts from Kisumu or Meru or Mombasa. And if you can see the cross-border traders, those one in Busia, they are much bigger than those one in, say, Kajiado. And in terms of customers also, you can see the bigger ones, so they have some institutional customers as well as wholesale customers, where for the smaller ones, it's mostly retail and end users. And because of this difference of open air market and cross-border traders, so there are some additional challenges that the cross-border traders face compared to the open air market. So a little more on in the next slide. So that if we talk about general challenges, so two things. One, which is common for both the groups. One is they're still recovering from the COVID effect. It is much, much better than what it was initially, but they're still in a recovery phase. Business is not as good as it was before COVID. And second is the rising inflation in the country. Because of that, so kind of a cycle has started. These people have less money and their things are costly, they are buying less. A lot of people customers are also demanding to give things on credit, which is also putting some more pressure on the business. Secondly, so this is then, and then the open air market traders, they also are struggling to get more market linkages, to get more like regular customers, especially if the institutional or organizational ones, which can actually be more helpful to them. And for the cross-border traders, there is a lot of other kind of challenges. Number one is the changing exchange rate of currency. If you see the cross-border areas, so there, the currency for both the country, for Kenya and either Tanzania or Uganda, both are being used. And if they are getting the supplies across the border again, so they have to really, it is challenging for them to fix their tariff because these currency rates are changing. So they have to be very cognizant about the current rate, which is not always the case. Secondly, there is a high increase in transportation cost. Third, there are a lot of harassment on the border in terms of what? Of course, by the authorities as well as by the truck drivers. So in many cases, we have heard that the truck drivers, they at one point of time, they have asked for bribes that they said, that, okay, you give me, I'll give to the border, but they did not give it to them. And the authorities charge them again. So they are putting this informal money twice. And then there are lots of other kinds of harassments and which are more severe for the women. So here we are talking about the gender difference, comparing the men traders and the women traders. For both open air market and cross-border traders together, you can see the men-run businesses are much larger in scale compared to the women-run one, both in terms of the business economics as well as number of employees. Around 36% of the male traders had some employee compared to 29% of women traders. And as you can see, this the difference, the dark blue graph line is for men, it is higher in income. And what happens in week 4? Again, the aftermath of the election, which kind of acted as kind of an equalizer. It was both men and women were equally affected. And for the cross-border traders, especially the female cross-border traders, have to suffer more from these extortions, I would say, because they are considered as more like an easy prey, easier to extort money or easier to prone to harassment, but they do not have any option but to go ahead with this because to support their family economically, financially. So till now we just talked about the overall life of the traders. Now let's go into deep into the financial life. So this is a case of, say, a name Catherine, who is a open air market trader from Gikomba, Nairobi. Very similar to Anne, whom you have just met. So she has a wholesale buyer, African Heritage, who buys handicrafts from her on bulk. And so this data is of 19th of August, where we are trying to understand her financial life for that particular day. Sales revenue. She earned 15,000 shilling in cash from their her retail customers. And then the African Heritage has paid her 100,000 shilling in M-Pesa. So that was her income. In terms of business expenses, she paid a supplier of 15,000 shilling through M-Pesa for buying stock. And there are other things like transport. She has also made a kind of an investment. She tried to diversify and started to open a new location in Westlands. So she also paid the monthly rent of that shop, the second shop that they have, other than the Gikomba one. Then she had some personal expenses. She had to pay her home rent, she had to pay for lunch and airtime. So these are her income and expense on that particular day. Then there are savings and credits. She did not have to pay back any loan on that day, but she did savings in two ways. One, savings in Chama, in cash, 300 shilling. And then she shaved in a bank account through M-Pesa, 7,000 shilling. Now, here also comes some financial decision making. Her business is in a way that she needs to have cash or M-Pesa money handy, because anytime suppliers can come to her and she has to pay. If she misses that day, so maybe she will not have a good supply for some time. So she needs to have some liquidity with her. So that's why while deciding how much money to save on bank, she has to do a calculation. On that particular day, she wanted to have around 80,000 shilling in her M-Pesa account, so that if next day a good supplier comes, she can pay them. And the remaining amount, so that's how she had to do a mental calculation about how much money she can save on bank using a bank agent. So this is the life of her for one agent. Now let's understand two aspects, savings and credit, in a little greater detail. Savings. About choice of tools, location plays a very important role. As you can see, the open air market traders, they are mostly in urban areas. So they are more prone to have tools like savings account from banks, MFIs. But on the other hand, the cross-border traders, who are in most of the cases in the rural areas, so they have, their majority of the source of savings are Chama. This is one. Second, we found out that the motivation to save regularly is often to secure a credit line. Why we are saying so? So most of these traders are part of group lending models, where they are part of the banks who are lending them in a group, and to get a loan from those groups, you need to do some constant savings. So this happens from the financial institutions as well as some local chamas, wherein from the chama you can save money and you can get a loan 5 times of that whatever you were saying. So savings comes as a kind of a byproduct of the way they want to secure a credit line. Now there are some self-imposed measures also to save. Like some of them have used a lock savings account in Mshwari. Some of them, they have made it a point that they every day they save a limited amount to Chama so that they have some kind of savings. Then they are also paying some extra. So another thing where they made a deal with their financial institution, be it formal or informal, where they can, so say for her loan repayment amount is 7,000 shilling, but she makes it a point to deposit an amount of 8,000 shilling so that the institution can make the remaining amount to her savings. So this is the way, so people have also adopted informal mechanisms to, about some innovative mechanisms to make it a point to savings. And also, like we have heard from some of our diaries that when we actually started to ask them, do you do savings? Do you have a secure money that you need for future? So that actually instigated them to think about it. And some of them also started a home bank after that so that they have some money for future. So maybe instead of like financial literacy training, so those are of course a little more intensive process, but maybe asking some simple questions can also instigate this thinking that okay, I need to do something for my savings or for my loans. So just a side point just wanted to highlight. This is about credit, but we try to go a point deeper and understand what actually helping them to increase demand for credit. External factors. Here we'll talk about two external factors, the two boxes in the dark blue color. One is the increasing inflation, the other is the schools decreasing the time gap between two terms. So increasing inflation is actually leading them to decrease in number of customers, decrease in sales per customer, and then increasing the demand for customers to purchase on credit. So that in terms is leading to reduced revenue and more pressure on the financial health of the business. And because of the increasing inflation, their personal expenses are increasing. So both of these together is actually having a bad effect on their financial health and leading them to increasing their demand for more loans. On the other hand, so because of now the things are becoming quite normal, so many of the schools have reduced the gap between two terms from 1 month to 1 week. It is putting more pressure on the parents to manage the school fees within a short period of time. And what they are doing, do not have any other choice other than to divert money from the working capital from the business to pay the school fees. And that again putting a lot of pressure on the financial health of the business. The result, more demand for loan. So the demand for loan is for their personal expenses as well as business expenses. And in our sample, the average amount of the ticket size of credit that we have is around 40,000 shilling. But of course, there is a high demand for having a higher amount. But again, lack of collateral is an issue, like all of us know. So next, we're trying to understand things. When you think about women traders, maybe we can think of like a Duka or that kind of thing, but they are not a monolithic group. There are segments inside. So we tried to do a segmentation exercise. What we did, we took a few indicators from their profiling data. The type of mobile phone that they use, whether they use mobile financial service product like M-Pesa for their business, whether they have a savings bank account, whether they do bookkeeping, whether they do some management of their inventory, whether they themselves take the major decision for business or not. And then we did a scoring for each of them. So each of our respondents have a score between 2 to 9, and we divided it into 3 different segments: the high sophistication, moderate sophistication, and low sophistication. As you can see, more than 1/3, around 39% are from the high sophistication group, around 1/3, 33% of moderate sophistication, and less than 1/3, 28% of low sophistication. And if we compare it across the open air market traders and the cross-border traders, you will see more open air market traders are from the high sophistication category than their cross-border counterparts. If you remember, we also saw that open air markets or market traders, they earn more compared to the cross-border traders. So that get us thinking whether there is a relationship between them, like the business sophistication and the income that are earning, which is kind of intuitive also. So we tested that, and voila, yes, exactly. We saw that the orange one is the high sophistication one. You can see their net income is quite high than the moderate and low sophistication one. And the high sophistication one, they also have a very clear preference that they prefer mobile MFS products as their choice of channels. And these 3 segments, what we found out from a lot of qualitative discussion with them, they have separate needs in terms of financial products. How? Let's first talk about the low sophistication ones. Of course, they also want loan, but it is more to make ends meet. So if we talk about productive credit, which is the credit which we can give people to grow their business and to use for some economic purpose. So they are maybe not the right target group for productive credits, because what they need, one, they need small ticket size loans that can actually help them keep going. Secondly, they need more of a business advisory service that you also heard from our guests. So this is the major 2 things that we found which are more critical for the low sophistication. The moderate sophistication one, they are a good candidate for productive credit, but not a big ticket size one. A moderate ticket size one they can use, and they will not use the whole money for the business. They will use a part of it for the business and part for personal for consumption smoothing. And for the high sophistication one, who earn more, who are more sophisticated, who have more clear preference for DFS. So they are actually maybe the target group for productive credit by the financial institutions. But of course, lack of collateral is a challenge. So maybe we have to see if we can think of alternate mode of collaterals or any other way to solve this problem. Now this is the last slide, just to bring all of it together, that the open air market traders and cross-border traders are 2 distinct categories. There are very significant difference between them. And the female traders run smaller businesses than men and face more challenges. And 5 key findings that we tried to sum it up. Number 1, female traders are not monolithic. They are not one group. They are a segment. There are various segments. There are different categories, and each of them have their unique needs and circumstances. Then second is, owing to the external factors, the female traders exhibit a higher demand for credit, especially today. The third is, different segments have different need for credit. So both in terms of end use of the loan as well as how they want to repay of the loan. Like we have seen that some of our diaries said that they prefer Chama because the credit model, the repayment model is more flexible, which of course is true. We know that it is very difficult to do in a formal setting, but that's what is still on the say from the field. And while using digital DFS, they prefer different channels, each of these segments. Then the fourth one, that women open air market traders, they earn more than cross-border traders. More people among that group are from the higher sophistication, and they also have more aspiration for their business growths. And the last, owing to the volatile nature of their business, the female traders are in the need to save for the future. It's a filled need. Sometimes they think of it by themselves. Sometimes maybe asking some simple question, get them thinking about them. And they want to use various tools, various innovative methods, and location plays a very important role here. So here is, we will close the presentation, and if you have any questions, we will be very happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rahul. That was super, super informative. Thank you. And now we've had 2 perspectives. We started off with the women, and they gave us the qualitative perspectives, and they're right here. Please feel free to talk to them during the tea time. And then we've had the quantitative perspective as well from Rahul. So what we'd like to do now is to take a bit of time and open it up to you guys. I know we've pumped with a lot of information, but would love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, any questions that you might have. please feel free to answer. We'll also take questions and comments from the team that's online. So please don't be shy. Ask. Everyone who's able to answer your question is right here. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that presentation and the presentation from the market traders. My question goes to the lady from Kajiado. She said that hakuna soko. Did you mean that there's no actual marketplace, or is that there's no customer? So hakuna soko ile, yani
hakuna soko mahali tunafanya biashara pale Namanga. Okay. Kila mtu ako kivyake. Kuna soko ilijengwa pale lakini bado haijaikuwa soko.
Okay. Asante, nimeelewa.
Yeah, let me just go ahead. Awesome. Thank you for that question. Anyone else has something dying to ask? All right. Oh, perfect.
Here you
go. You know, when you have the entrepreneurs in the room, you must ask them. Ulisema pia ya kwamba interest rate is high. So you said you pay 50 bob a day on 1,000. Yes? Okay. Do you borrow from apps, or do you borrow from individuals? Individuals. Okay. Asante.
Well, thank you very much. My question goes to Anne. Ulisema unapitia changamoto mingi sana ukitaka kuomba loan.
Yes.
Ni changamoto gani haswa unapitia ukienda kwa bank?
Unaona, nikienda kwa bank naweza itishwa title deed ama logbook na sina
collateral
ama guarantors.
Kwa hivyo ni collateral.
Yeah.
Okay, asante.
All right, so we thought we might just quickly translate that for the people who didn't quite get that. So the idea was akuna guarantors, right? Yeah. So she needs to get someone to guarantee her loan, and so that forms a challenge when she needs to try and access digital financial services. So I want to open it up for questions, just in case there's someone else online.
Hi, yeah, there's a question online from Jacinta. She's asking the women if they've considered borrowing from MFIs, that is microfinance institutions.
Jacinta anauliza kama mtu ameweza kukopa pesa kwa. Yes. Ndio. Yeah.
Huwa mara mingi tunajaribu kukopa hizo pesa, but iko na process. Ni kama iko na njia hivi. Ukijaribu kupeleka, unapeleka forms, unajaza, lakini hatufaulu kupata hizo fedha. Na pia interest zao ziko juu.
So she's talked about there's a process that can be long and complex, and then the interest rate is also high. All right, so any other questions, anything that is pressing?
Kwa na swali moja, najua ulisema kuwa mtumii hizi loan kama kwenye masimu, hizi zenye zachukuliwa kwenye simu hizi. Shida ni nini, mbona huwa msitumii kabisa? Kwa sababu nimeona umesema unachukua kwa mtu, kule kuna changamoto mingi, mbona sio hizi za simu? Ni kuwa hela itoshi ama shida iko wapi?
Ya simu unaweza request na unataka tuseme unataka 10,000. na wakuanzishe na 2,000 ama 4, si unaona haitakusaidia. So there is no need kuchukua, kwa sababu utachukua tu ne deni utaongeza kwa deni nyingine.
Okay. Oh, okay, sipolipo. Okay,
na unaanza kutafutwa kama tala, wanakutafuta mpaka mahali huko.
Okay.
Okay.
So she's mentioned 2 issues, and that's why the room is laughing. So one issue is if you want to borrow $100, you want the $100, but they'll start you off on $20, so it'll take you a while to get there. The second issue was also about the being reported to CRBs. She's mentioned a few names. I'll be shy not to put anyone on the spot, but that also causes a bit of challenge when you get reported.
Okay, nikijibu ile ya online, kuna challenge kwa sababu like mali nafanya kazi, nikitaka pesa ya bank, nitaambiwa nitengeneze kikundi ya watu fulani. Tukishatengeneza, deporters watakuwa pale. So itakuwa ni shida juu ya ingine, kwa sababu wewe ukindeport lazima mimi nilipe. Kama tumeambiwa tukue wa mama 10, 3 wakuwa wazuri, 7 wakimbie. Hii ni Nairobi. Na hii ni Kenya, kila mtu ni mjanja.
Right. So I missed a previous point that she also talked about, which was the long process. It's a bit bureaucratic. But the second issue now was the fact that if she wants a loan, she'll be advised to form a group of, let's say, 10 women. But then the default rate is high, and so she's concerned that, you know, if she's formed the group, they're repaying, other people default, then it's on her neck and she loses her savings. Oh, and she also said this is Nairobi and this is Kenya, so things happen.
So I wanted to ask you guys, have you ever heard of an loan app called Shara? Okay. So I used to work there before. Shara. It's a loan app. So yeah, Shara. Shara. Yeah. So they give business people loans. But now the problem is, like for you, like you're in Gikomba, the only challenge they have is you have to have a physical shop. And the problem with Gikomba, most of the time, you find that your kibandas zimechomwa, you have to move. Yeah. So that is a challenge they have, but they actually give people loans at 5% interest per month. Yeah. Per month? Yeah. Per year? So the highest term you can take is 3 months, that is 15%. So let's say you've taken 100K, and you've chosen 3 months, so that is 15%. So every week you make a payment. So let's say in a month you have to pay, if you've taken 100K, that is around 38K in a month. So you divide it with 4 weeks. So every week you pay 9,500. Yeah.
All right, there's one more question from the team that's online.
So there are two questions actually. So one from Warenga Kibe, she's asking, and she uses M-Pesa, and how much of that is Fuliza, the credit? And also from Gordon, he's asking, why would you opt for Shylocks, and you can use your chamas which have better interest rates? Let me translate. So mnaulizwa kwa ile pesa mnatumianga ya M-Pesa kama mnatumianga Fuliza, na mbona mnakopa kutoka Shylocks na mnaweza tumia chama? Mbona mna opt kutumia Shylocks badala ya kukopa kwa chama?
Shylocks natumia kwa sababu naweza pata order urgently. So nikiuliza Fuliza wanaweza niambia niko worth 500 or 1000 na nataka kazi, tuseme kazi ni ya 1,100 na so nakimbilia tu kwa ule mtu ndio at least nifanye hii kazi nipate ile faida kidogo ningawe na yeye. Hiyo ndio maana.
Right on. So she's explained the challenge with Shylocks the challenge of taking Fuliza is that the credit appraisal process will be too slow. So if she wants, say, 100,000 shillings, she can only get $10 initially, while she can just go directly to the Shylock and get more money. So I am going to quickly cap it on questions, unless there's a question that you're feeling like you really can't sit on.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment. My name is Edward Biketi. I'm part of MSC. Rahul, could you go to the last slide? The last one, yes. Point number 1 up there. No, the last slide, complete last one. Yes. What does it say?
Segments, each one with its own needs and circumstances.
Okay. So. This is just a pointer to the team and further research. That point talks about intersectionality.
Right.
Because intersectionality means people have they're categorized into different clusters based on their experiences and where they are and how power behaves. So women can be, it's just helping the inclusion part. Women can be sort of marginalized because of disability, because of religion, because of location, yeah?
Right.
Because of ethnicity. So it's just that I'm pointing out that helps unpack that in terms of inclusion. Thank you.
A really great point, Dr. Biketi. So it also goes well with what we are trying to see, that one is, of course, their financial behavior and sophistication, but also location played an important role, like you were saying. So gender, their locations and other aspects all put together actually affecting their financial and other lives. So thank you so much for pointing that out.
So good morning. My name is Anataria Uamaria. I'm the Director Business Competitiveness at Trademark East Africa. And my question is just around the financial diaries and how much information we can actually get on the cost of financing for the traders, because it's very clear that just the calculation in itself is it's a stretch for them to actually understand the implication on their businesses. So as you collect the information on the payments they're making on a loan, for example, or mobile payments, do you also take into consideration, or do you request that they also look at some of the costs that they incur when they're paying or when they're receiving payments? And then these interest rates on a daily basis, because in most cases you ask a trader, how much are you paying back? They'll give you what they assume is the total cost and not necessarily the cost they incur on payments that are being made on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis.
Yes, thank you, Natalie, for pointing that out. Yes, so at one point of time, we are of course capturing the amount of money that they are repaying back. And on the other hand, we are also capturing a couple of other things which are, say, other kind of expenses. Say, if it is related to travel or other expenses that actually goes into securing the loan and paying it back. So in terms of those, it is coming from the daily diaries data. For the other point that you mentioned, whether how much part of the total amount is actually interest versus how much is the principal. So that we are trying to get for each. So we are making a detailed profile of each of the 30 diarists with whom we are working right now. And we are trying to get a detailed understanding of these aspects about their which part of that is, whether they know it about it or not. And secondly, we can also collaborating it with the financial institutions to understand how much of their if there is any information gap between what the diarists are understanding and what is actually going on. So yes, that is in the process. So we do not have it right now, but that is in the process to finding out for each of the diarists. Thank you so much. It's a very important point.
All right, we have one more slot before tea. And I know you're probably sitting on a few questions, and over tea time, I'm sure those 2 questions will bubble up. So please use that time to talk to our panelists or talk to anyone that you'd like to get a few answers to. But now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Apologies he couldn't come right on time, but Dennis, we're very happy to have you here. So Dennis is the Director of Retail Banking at Payments at Equity Bank. He has over 17 years of banking experience, working at leading financial institutions in the country, and has been behind amazing product innovations and rollout. So Dennis, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's still morning. Good morning. Good morning. Very good. Nice to be here. And yes, apologies. I couldn't manage to be here when we were starting, but I did give my apologies, and I'm happy to be here. It's good to see all of you wonderful people. Sorry, my voice is a bit spent, but we shall work with it as it is. Is that all right? Fantastic. It's good to see all of you. My friend Tamara, really good to see you here. And everyone in the room, our customers. I think the conversation that has just been held is a very fascinating conversation. It probably speaks to what it really ultimately takes to sort and to solve for the market segment that we all want to do. A few weeks ago, I was addressing a team of innovators, founders of businesses, and in a different part of the markets. And they start, even before we could go too far, they start talking about the challenges they have. A couple of them are doing what you call marketplaces, and they are digitally building marketplaces just to be able to sell their wares. But before they are done talking about the technology and the brilliance of technology they have built, they say, but we have a logistics challenge. And while I have demand on one side and supply on the other side, just to get the actual products becomes an issue. And we said, so is the logistics gap a challenge or is it an opportunity? And most of them being techs, able to build all of these wonderful solutions. And at some point we had to agree that then that looks like the picture of the opportunity we have in the room, because then our ability to solve for it enables scale and creation of something totally different and moves the entire market into a different frontier. And as I listen to this conversation, I hear two things, and it is a crossroads of every entrepreneur. That number one, for what is convenient, it sounds expensive. But also for what is affordable, it sounds bureaucratic. And I guess every day entrepreneurs find themselves in this interesting crossroad of conveniently expensive and affordably bureaucratic. And I wonder which is the easier one? Tamara, which route do we then take? Because then when it is on phone, I guess we have almost gone to the point where they say, na ukinitumia usinitumie kwa hii namba na kupigia nitumie kwa hii namba ingine. Does that sound familiar? For your benefit, we are at the point where they say, and if you have to send the money on my mobile, don't send on this number, send on this other number. Na natuma kwa hiyo namba ingine juu labda hii iko na kafuliza mahali na ukituma hapo imeenda. And so hatujasaidiana. All right? And the truth of the matter is this. There are no simple solutions to this problem. Yet we must solve them up. And we have to. I listened to my friend amesema kwa chama iko bureaucracy na iko process. Na sijui the alternative ya process ni gani. Because pande ile ingine pia you also acknowledge tukiingia kwa kikundi wengine hawalipi. And the lender also wants their money paid back. And it's interesting. I want to say we've been very privileged. And allow me just to really applaud Microsoft for what you're doing. Really glad that you can bring us together to keep having this conversation. And all the wonderful partners that are here today, I really want to appreciate you and commend you for taking your time, including our customers, for taking your time for us to have this discussion. Because it is an important discussion. I must, however, say there are no simple and straight answers. We have to work. There has to be something on your side, and there has to be something on our side. And I think it's going to take the collective ability of all of us just to be able to solve this. Dennis is my name. I think I was introduced. I work for an organization whose vision I want to talk about in a few minutes, because it's what makes this discussion interesting. And I want to say that we have been built out of enterprises, and my colleague Kara is right here, that are largely women. And We've come a long way. Tamara has worked with us at some point. Microsave has been with us for the longer part of this journey, maybe for close to 2 decades now, working together. We started off with a rural setup, and then we were privileged enough that the rural setup allowed us to eventually make our way to the towns and to the cities. We are not a creation of the cities, we are a creation of the village. And so when we talk about the Namangas that I've seen, and the Kajiados and the Merus, and I was very happy to see a market called Gakoromone somewhere in Meru, because I have spent my days in that Gakoromone market, building up and educating our women and so on and so forth. And I want to say, while it sounds difficult, it is absolutely doable, because an equity stands on the fact that we have been able to do it one way or the other. We continue to engage in more ways than one, because our quest to improve and build on what has been done continues, and we continue to see the opportunities that lie ahead. Today, when you said to me, Namanga, there is no market, then what goes through my mind is, how do we then build the market? And how do we make it available so that then people can do the trade that they need to do? And maybe the auxiliary issues that we may need to solve for to eventually get there. But hey, if that's what it takes, then it must be done. It must be done. We stand on an interesting trajectory as Equity Bank. Our roadmap between 2022 and 2025 is dubbed the Africa Recovery and Resilience Plan. And it is our Marshall Plan for the period between 2022 and 2025. Equity started off 1984, became technically insolvent 10 years later, has risen from insolvency to probably becoming the largest bank in East and Central Africa, from a balance sheet perspective and from many perspectives. Over the last 38 years, we have been privileged to be home to close to 17 million customers. But our desire by 2025 is, while it has taken us 38 years to build 17 million customers, the next 3 years must help us to build it to 100 million customers. And that's what we are up to. Effectively, it means that then we only have another 3 years to build a base of about 83 million customers. But for us, these are not just numbers. This is the bold statement of saying we want to drive inclusion in every way we can. Because then whichever way you dice the number of 83 million, these cannot be corporates. These would have to be retail markets. These would have to be individual customers that have the aspiration of making something better with their lives and building their enterprises. And if I speak a bit into that particular number, and by the way, it's going to be done, and that's why I'm very excited about the financial diaries, because then there is absolutely no way of doing this in the traditional way. It has to be digitized. No two ways about that. And speaking closer to those numbers is the fact that then within those numbers, we seek to support 5 million businesses, 5 million enterprises. It's part of what we must fund within that space of time. But let me also say, 5 million is not just 5 million, but it is what the 5 million represents that becomes exciting for us. Because then for us, every enterprise is an ecosystem. And we don't look at any entrepreneur as a standalone enterprise, but we do look at them as an ecosystem. If you think about what businesses do, they in effect provide demand for producers, and they then deliver supply to where the demand side looks like. And they're an intermediation, if you think about it. This animal we've called MSMEs does nothing more than redistribute resources and products and commodities within the market, irrespective of the size or scale. And so, coming from that premise, 5 million businesses for us represent about 50 million employment opportunities, and I'll tell you how. Because for each of the 5 million businesses, we look forward to being able to capacitize them enough to provide 5 direct jobs and 5 indirect jobs. Well, from the data, it's suggested that the open market provide more employment than the borders, whichever the arithmetic. At the end of the day, every business, look at where we stand today. This location, by being an enterprise, has provided direct jobs to some chefs, has provided some direct jobs to security guys, to some, there's accommodation here. These guys who clean the room, know what they're called. Housekeeping. It has provided opportunities for housekeeping. It has provided opportunities for, and if you count the direct jobs that come with it, there are a couple of them. But also, it's the power of the indirect jobs that come out of this. Because I can tell you for free, for every slice of chicken you ate here today, I don't know that you've eaten or you shall eat into the future, whichever of those, there must have been a chicken farmer somewhere that was empowered and got a market to provide it. In case you took some tea, there's definitely a milk farmer, because this facility doesn't look like it rears cows. It's unlikely. But it therefore means that there was some veg farmer that got a guaranteed market. And for as long as we continue coming, then there's a veg farmer who has a guaranteed market. There's a milk farmer who has a guaranteed market. There's a beef farmer who has a guaranteed market, and so on and so forth. And for us, we see entrepreneurship and enterprises really as an anchor to provision of jobs, to provisions of demand, to anchoring supply, and so on and so forth. And so for us, as we then chase, not just the 5 for the sake of the 5, but it will be that each of the 5 provides 5 direct jobs, and each of the 5 also provides 5 indirect jobs. And if each of them provided 10 jobs, directly and indirectly, then hopefully in another few years then we can talk about 50 million jobs that have been created as a result. But if you think about it, going back to where I began, that what is convenient is expensive, but what is affordable is too bureaucratic. The question is, how do we then solve for that particular challenge? Because then if we manage to solve for that particular challenge, then I think we move ourselves forward. And part of this is probably 2 or 3 things. Number one is a question of digitization. And allow me to speak a bit into what we're doing as Equity. Sometimes I think we don't communicate enough. And Anoop has looked at me in the face and said to me, communicate better, Dennis. And I take your challenge, sir. We will try and do. Where I fall short, I think you have capacity to help me. And my good old friend, there must be capacity, because sometimes we are also where we are because we are not communicating effectively. I like the question that asked, why do we go to Shylocks? When this Africa Resilience Plan has put aside $6 billion over the next 3 years just for lending. And mimi nasema niko na bilioni $6. Mi nataka usaidike upanue biashara, lakini bado unaenda kwa Shylock na unalimwa. Na najiuliza itakuwaje? All right? But part of this thing, I want to just put it into 3 things. Number one is digitization. Ni ngumu ni kusaidia kama sikuelewi. Ama namna gani? Lakini tukielewana itakuwa rahisi tusaidiane. Ni kama ile duka yako, kama hujai niona na nataka unikopeshe, utanikopesha kweli? Utasema huyu jamaa hata sijui, sijai muona. Lakini kama nakujanga mara kwa mara, ile siku napungukiwa, si utanisaidia? Iko namna hiyo. Digitization, and I think this credit question has been, it needs to be demystified. There's nothing, it needs to be demystified. Inamaanisha kwamba tukielewana tunaweza fanya kazi kwa njia rahisi. And let me say this, and one of the slides talked about collateral. I think gone are the days when we were asking for collateral. There is more lent today uncollateralized than on collateral. And maybe this is an information gap that we must sort out. I'm happy to see our chair of the digital lending. My friend, I only see you on media. I'm glad we can be in the same room today. All right? And if you look at his association, they have lent more uncollateralized than with collateral. All right? And it continues every single day. Today I can tell you for free, maybe I have close to 70 or close to over 70% of my book not even collateralized. All right? What am I interested in? Mi nataka nielewe biashara yako. These financial diaries they are talking about, they are very important. And I want to give you a platform on mobile that you can receive payments and release payments even at no cost, because the interest for me is not to make money out of your transactions, but just to understand you. And if I can understand you, then what it will enable me to do is to actually provide you a credit limit. And whether that is provided by myself or any other financier in here, that's what I want to do. And I don't want you to close shop to come and borrow. I want it available on your mobile phone. But if you don't like my limits, chances are very high you're also not doing enough with me. You all right? Because I assign you a limit based on what you're doing with me. And that's one. We continue to then assign a limit that you can pick from your phone, borrow. And of course, for someone like banks being regulated, it means I cannot charge you beyond a certain interest rate because I am regulated. If I tried to do that, the central bank comes on my neck, and I have a license to also protect. But beyond a license to protect, I also want to say I think the social license is even more important. Because then when I look back at what we have seen as a transformation driven by ladies and women, it is absolutely very inspiring. As I said, we started off with tea farmers somewhere in Mount Kenya. And those are the people we started with. And today when we see what they have been able to do, they are doing massive things. The journey of 1,000 miles does start somewhere. And so I think the discussion in the room today is extremely important. If we can assign some of the $6 billion to our women in the open spaces and on the borders, and we are currently doing a project with Microsafe on that very same topic, I think it would bless our hearts. Because then when you empower a woman, you certainly empower an entire community. And therefore, we look forward just to being able to do this. You're right at the heart of our strategic path between now and 2025. And I believe all of us who are gathered here today come because that subject does matter. And whatever it takes, I think we must do it. My final comment is to say, let's concert our efforts and figure out how to also make it convenient and affordable, and remove bureaucracy from affordability, while at the same time removing unaffordable from convenience. If we can bake a larger cake as an economy, I think it provides opportunities to every last one of us. And our model has demonstrated it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be scaled on the principle we call low margins, but high volumes. And I think either way, we eventually get there. And therefore, allow me to thank you all for spending your time and dignifying this very important agenda with your time, with your thought process. I want to believe together we shall provide affordable and convenient. God bless you and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Very, very powerful words. I was scribbling on a pad here and realized I'm running out of paper, and you're running out of points. So really thank you so, so much for that. We're just about to go for tea, so I encourage all of you to take a step out, have tea, but please interact with the presenters. Please get to know someone that you didn't come with today. Get time to understand, what we're really trying to get at. But I think Equity, what you've done and presented there, Dennis, was fantastic. I've carried out so many things, especially on the linkage between affordability and bureaucracy and convenience. Brilliant. And thank you for communicating. We've seen you. We've seen the 36% growth in net profit. We've seen the 99% of transactions digital. We are seeing that. Keep communicating. It's inspiring us and moving the industry forward. All right, we have a 10-minute break, so please, tea break for 10 minutes, so please get out, enjoy, stretch your feet. Again, the facilities, you know where they are. Please interact and get to know each other. See you in 10.
check, check.
So Sharon, how is the event going for you?
It's going great. And I think for me, what's really standing out, what is convenient is expensive, what is affordable is very bureaucratic.
No, that was such powerful words. I think for me what stood out is the fact that this group that we're talking about is not homogeneous. They have different needs, aspirations, different attitudes towards tech, different things they're willing to try or have tried. And so it's really important to understand them holistically to design a solution that works for them.
Correct. And if I hear them correctly, 3 things stand out: trust, affordability, and literacy when it comes to the low usage of DFS amongst the women who trade in the open air markets and the cross-border trades. Really, Kim, do you think there's a business case opportunity that financial service providers and fintechs can take advantage of, in trying to solve for this problem?
Absolutely, and that is a segment that is coming next. So I hope you all enjoyed your tea break and are ready to engage for the next session. It is going to start in a few minutes, and it is my pleasure to introduce our team leader, our domain lead for Africa, our partner and regional head, Mr. Abnoop Singh. He is as much African as he is Indian, so we are very grateful. I have been learning a few things, including how to say yes and no, but I get it confused. But Anoop, thank you so much for gracing this time with us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kim and Charlotte, for wonderful comparing and at least telling my secret abilities as well. The yes and no. So you know about the Indian yes and Indian no. No? So you don't know whether this is a no or a yes. So it is very, very subtle body language that you have to keep in mind while dealing with the Indians. Anyway, so thank you so much for being with us. I know we are slightly delayed, but I think this was the meat of the event, bringing together really, really strategic people, 6 strategic people that we are going to have as our panelists, so that then they can talk about what is the business case that they see in focusing on women, micro and small entrepreneurs. So I would like to invite the 6 panelists, one after another. I'd like to give a very brief introduction of theirs. Most of them do not need any introduction at all because they have lived and breathed financial inclusion and micro enterprise focus for at least 15 to 20 years. So I'll start first with Dr. Daryl Collins. Dr. Daryl is the CEO and founder of Decodis. Decodis is a social research firm that creates tech-led customized data capture and analysis to elevate the voices of vulnerable population. Dr. Daryl is also known as the author of the acclaimed Portfolios of the Poor book. If you work in financial inclusion, it is a must. You must read that book. She holds a BSc and MSc in economics from London School of Economics and a PhD from New York University, and she's coming all the way from US just to grace this event. So thank you so much, Dr. Daryl. Please have a seat. Anywhere. Next up, we have Kathleen Tobin. She's the Executive Director of Moonbridge Inclusive Solution. She's a global financial inclusion consultant with deep private and public sector experience. She has the expertise in identifying and distilling actionable insights around women's financial needs and preferences. She has previously worked with Women's World Banking, Johnson & Johnson, Revlon, and Unilever. Welcome, Kathleen. She's also coming all the way from US. So before I move on to other panelists, both Kathleen and Dr. Daryl have been working with us. They are our strategic advisors on this project and have been guiding the team, which was able to do the financial diaries and collate information, convert them into insights, and then use those insights to create solutions that would work for the women, micro and small entrepreneurs. Next up, we have Anataria Uamaria. Anataria is the Director of Business Competitiveness for Trademark East Africa. She is a trade and development professional with experience in the areas of market system and private sector development. She is currently leading the business competitiveness portfolio at Trademark East Africa. For those who don't know Trademark East Africa, it is a not-for-profit company which works with East African countries' institutions, national governments, business, and civil society organizations to promote prosperity through trade in East Africa. She will be bringing the trade perspective, specifically the cross-border trade perspective, to our panel. Welcome, Dr. Anatravia. Next, we have Tamara. So Tamara is the CEO of FSD Kenya. She has more than 20 years of experience in financial inclusion space. She has been involved with many digital innovations, including digital savings and credit, mobile health, mobile treasury bonds, mobile agriculture finance, merchant payments, and mobile bank payment. She has served on MCOPA's board for 5 years. She's now a member of their credit committee. Prior to FSD Kenya, Tamara spent 7 years at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, managing a global portfolio of grants and loans supporting financial service providers reach poor people with digital financial services. She has also spent 10 years with the CGAP consultative group to assist the poor, housed at the World Bank. Welcome, Tamara. So now I'd like to invite Kevin Mutiso. Kevin Mutiso is an accomplished business leader and entrepreneur. He is currently the board chair of the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya, and he is also the CEO of OA Kenya. He is the co-founder and non-executive director at Grab and Go Africa. He is also currently CEO and co-founder of Alternative Circle, a company that started off as a digital lending company and developed Shika, a digital financial product that enabled individuals with little or no credit history to access affordable microloans through their mobile phones. Welcome, Kevin. And lastly, we have Elizabeth Wasuna. She is the Director of Business Banking for ABSA Group. She's an experienced business banking director with over 20 years of demonstrated history in the banking industry. She is skilled in building teams in business focused on sales and growth generation. She is a BSc in Business Administration and an MBA with a focus on marketing and strategic management from UCU. Thank you so much, all our panelists. The format of this panel discussion, we have made slight tweak to the whole format. So what we'll do is, I'll start off with a framing statement and then invite two of you to talk about very specific focus area. So here we have Dr. Daryl and Kathleen who would be talking about the demand side insights. Then we have Anataria and Tamara who would talk more from the perspective of associations and a facilitation, a market conduct. And then we have from representing the financial service providers, we have Kevin and Elizabeth who would represent the financial service provider, so that we are able to see a 360-degree, a holistic picture of what is happening with respect to access to financial services for women, micro and small enterprises in Kenya. So I'll start first with Kathleen and Daryl. The framing statement that I have is product development for women, micro and small enterprises operating from open air and cross-border markets bring unique opportunities and challenge. So the first question that I have for Daryl is, what are the unique financial needs of the women, micro and small enterprises that are operating from open air and cross-border market that financial institutions must consider as they're building their financial products? And we also heard from what Rahul presented that these segments are not monolithic. There's a lot of nuances that is there. How would financial institutions be able to capture all those nuances? So over to you, Daryl.
Okay, so I had the privilege of having looked at the results presentation twice. So I was able to absorb a little bit more of the findings to really reflect on this question. And also, listening to the ladies this morning gave me an additional perspective that even then I didn't have, because both of you were just so articulate about making sure that we understood some of the barriers that you were facing and some of the motivations behind your business. So part of what I want to do, given that this is also just the start of this whole study, is frame some of the problems that maybe we're seeing right now. So one of the things that demand side research needs to do, and needs to do very, very well, is to articulate the problem, is to really understand what is the diagnosis. We need to be like doctors. What is the diagnosis of the problem? And the better we can do that, the better all of the financial service providers and the policymakers can do without going down the wrong trails. And it's pretty hard. Their jobs are really hard. As researchers, we get sort of the easy part, where we get to talk to people and try to understand things. It's far harder, in my opinion, to go out and provide financial services and to push policy. So we have a lot of responsibility to try to get it right. So I just wrote down a few remarks about what I thought was really important. So first of all, I think I'm going to mostly, the way I see it, the open air traders and the cross-border traders, they share solutions, or the diagnosis of the challenge that they face. There are many that are similar, but then in my opinion, the cross-border traders have some equal and additional ones, which, to be honest, I mean, not to be so excited about a problem, but they're challenges that I think finance can in particularly is poised to help fix. And they're a new set of challenges, I think, that we can actually also find new particular finance solutions to. So the first comment that I just wanted to make is, I mean, just to dive right into the details, is chamas are always going to be important. They just are. They're just a big, huge engine for growth and savings. In Africa as a whole, I've looked at the financial balance sheets of low-income households and small businesses across the world, and always, if you include informal instruments, Africa, as a continent, east, west, south, I don't know as much about north, tend to have a positive net worth statement. In South America and in Asia, it is negative. And the reason is because of the chamas. People have multiple chamas, they save a lot, they depend on them heavily. They're an engine for growth. We shouldn't try to move away from them. We do need to enable them. There's been a lot of efforts in digital chamas. Those efforts should go forward, but in particular, the focus of those chamas should not just be in making them work better, but they should be able to cross geographical spaces so that they can get bigger and more diversified. And they need to enable a digital footprint so that there's a possibility of getting individual loans based on that type of chama participation. So those are the big things, I think, in chama digital development. And I think that's going to be important for both segments. The other thing that really frustrates me is, can we not try to do something about cash on delivery? Everywhere I see orders and client engagement from merchants through social media and even on marketplaces, yet all the goods are delivered and people tend to want to pay cash. And that just raises the expenses and it increases the risk. And I think for these two groups in particular, it would be really, really helpful to crack that code, because I think there's a ton of risk in that delivery of goods, especially any sort of manufactured goods, that only gets paid in cash at this point, and not quite as much in digital. And I think that increases the expense on very tight margin businesses. And then the third thing, which I applied to everyone, is, geez, these networks. There should be, and Dakotas is doing a project on digital portfolios of, I mean, all types of DFS plus social media, et cetera. And in Kenya in particular, there is a huge eagerness to build those networks. And those networks should be built not only for business, but also peer-to-peer learning and peer-to-peer encouragement. I feel like I'm hearing from the businesses that they don't know how to run a business when they're already doing it. And I get it, there are a lot of things you don't know, but I think real financial learning, financial literacy, happens in a peer-to-peer manner. So those networks need to be enabled. For cross-border traders in particular, and let me try to move through these pretty quickly, the exchange rate volatility is unbelievable. But finance has a way of handling that stuff. It automatically, I think about forward markets, at least to make that exchange rate stable, even if it doesn't help to actually move it around. And so it just seems to me, especially with the partners that you're working with, surely mass market can be talking to any sort of cross-border trade and trying to map together a facility that enables some sort of pegging of exchange rates. That may sound very far-fetched and futuristic, but it's been we've been having those types of forward markets for years. So why not apply them here? And then lastly, it just seems to me that we do need to think very hard, and this is getting a little bit away from DFS, but trying to run a business off a smartphone, I mean, smartphones are awesome, but, and even off mobile data, it makes a huge difference to actually have continuous data that's uninterrupted and to be working off a larger screen. And so finding some way to upgrade that tool eventually into the future, I think then that's when you can really bring on a whole bunch of business information, business intelligence, vendor tracking, et cetera. So again, speaking a bit more into the future, but that's, I think, going to be another important point. Sorry.
Thank you. So the key takeaway that I'm taking from here is that chamas are going to be important because of the positive network effect that we see in Africa. Then the P2P, because women specifically learn in P2P kind of settings and the networks. Cash on delivery is a great idea, and then exchange rate volatility is something where financial institutions need to focus upon. Moving on to you, Kathleen, basis the work that you have been doing on designing DFS initiatives, the question that I have for you is how to successfully develop and implement DFS initiatives, specifically for the open air market and cross-border traders? And then is there a role of partnership and collaboration in that game?
Thanks. So if we think of digital as a pathway, it's a means, it's not the end. If it were the end, we would have solved it already, because we've had smartphones now for some time, and M-Pesa was launched 15 years ago, about 15 years ago. So if we think of digital as a pathway, we can also think more holistically. We can also just speak up. If we think of, if we think of digital as a pathway, we can think about what can be offered a bit more broadly. This morning from our very articulate traders, we heard a whole range of challenges. Some of them were financial. Many of them were not. It had to do with discrimination, time, other constraints. We're hearing also now about networks, mobility. And so there's a whole range of constraints that most people in this room know that women face, women entrepreneurs in particular. And one thing that has come out loud and clear from the research that I've been doing, particularly in the last few years, is that she doesn't have the time to look for solutions. Banks don't serve up solutions tailored for her, and she does not have the time to hunt. Her financial life is fragmented. As we've heard, she may use an MFI and a CHAMA and a bank and M-Pesa and 2 other mechanisms. And when it comes to building networks, her networks are smaller than her male counterparts. So I see digital as a powerful tool, as a means to bring all that together and put a more holistic solution in the palm of her hand. I haven't seen it been done well yet, but this is where I do see, kind of institutions, some banks moving in this direction, and it's exciting because there's an opportunity to really then begin to change the game in a way that's truly win-win, offering solutions that are relevant and that reach beyond the financial can also give the client tools to grow her business, which means that she can then use more products, and she's also probably becomes more loyal to the institution. So that's how I think of digital financial services today. And in terms of how to do it, MicroSave is kind of teaching us how to do it in many ways, but starting with the data, I would start with quantitative data, sex disaggregated quantitative data in your own portfolio. Track the 2, track by gender, where are the gaps, where are the differences in usage, where are the women, where are they not? Which segments are you interested in? Determine the segments and then go out and put her at the center and have the conversations to articulate the problem and go from there. So that's kind of where I see the potential of DFS to serve open market and cross-border MSEs. And then in terms of partnerships, huge opportunity for partnerships. I mean, M-Pesa was started through a collaboration between DFID and Vodafone. So there are two kind of ways to think of partnerships. There are probably many, but I'm going to talk about two. One is developing the innovation itself, and then the other is building the ecosystem. So developing the innovation is risk. You know, it takes risk. I mean, the segment is kind of unknown and not seen as particularly lucrative on the part of banks, and developing, really spending the money on the innovation is expensive, and that's a risk. That's where wonderful partnerships can come in that can help fund that innovation, pilot, test it, and validate it. Then once we have a use case, a business case that's been validated, we're not any longer really talking about financial services, we're talking about a holistic suite of solutions. And you know, Anataria here from Trademark East Africa told me today that they have an app that's designed for cross-border traders to do their bookkeeping on their smartphones, and that is going to be open source. So there may be ways to figure out exactly what's needed and integrate it again in a way that's win-win, so that the partner is also gaining clients and sending clients, and clients are benefiting in both ways. And so that's one way to think of it. Non-financial services is one. There are plenty of others as those needs arise, and as you know, perhaps the organization starts with the basic product that cuts across 3 different segments, and over time you begin to tailor as you see which ones are more sophisticated or which ones have very specific needs, and there's a big enough market to, you know, to meet that. So that would come. But I see partnerships as incredibly valuable in both developing the innovation, proving the business case, and then also building out that ecosystem, because that is where I think the magic can happen, so to speak, in terms of really moving the needle.
Thank you. Great point. So I think I'll take first one, which Kathleen did talk about, the fragmented financial lives. We are seeing the same from different markets. It's not only in Kenya, but in other markets. So in India, a typical cow, which can be seen as a productive asset, costs somewhere between $900 to $1,000. And a woman has to patch at least 3 loans to be able to buy that one productive asset. You can't break the cow or cut and only have the leg this time and the belly this next time and so on. That's point number one. The second point on the innovation and creating the ecosystem. What we have seen as an example is that partnerships really work, and I'll not name the institutions, but in Kenya, we have supported 2 institutions, one that built solutions, digital transformation solutions on its own, went the full mile, and it took them 24 months to break even, while the other one, which actually partnered with institutions and was able to do it in 8.5 months. So there are examples of the partnership. Great, so moving on swiftly to you, Anataria. We did talk about chamas, and Rahul did mention that cross-border traders usually prefer chamas. So the statement that I have is, trading across borders bring unique nuances that need to be considered in developing new financial products. And the question that I have is, we know that Trademark East Africa has been working on promoting women's collective who are working in the cross-border trade. So how is that approach helping address the constraints of WMSEs? And are there any financial constraints that are not being able to be addressed or leveraged or resolved because of that approach that you are using at the cross-border?
Thanks, Anup, for that. So as maybe just to give a brief introduction to what Trademark East Africa does. So Trademark is a not-for-profit organization that works across Africa. We initially started in East Africa, so we were formerly known as Trademark East Africa. We are now Trademark Africa, as we are opening up offices in West Africa. So our main mandate is trade facilitation and looking at boosting prosperity through trade. We run programming across 3 areas. The first one being reducing barriers to trade, where we set up infrastructure that facilitates ease and movement of people and goods. So developments at the Port of Mombasa, for example, digital solutions with customs agencies, construction of one-stop border posts, and trading markets, so formal markets, whether it's at border crossings or across high growth areas. Then the second work stream is around trade facilitation in general. So looking at things like quality standards, how do we support producers to ensure that they meet food safety standards and market entry requirements, and then work around elimination of non-tariff barriers, so ensuring that there's seamless movement of goods across corridors. And then lastly, it's the policy work that we do with public sector players, so trade policy, supporting government to negotiate agreements, supporting implementation of trade agreements like the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. And then the last work stream is the work that we do with the private sector. So looking at boosting competitiveness of private sector players for them to be able to take advantage of market opportunities. So we work on public-private dialogue, so with apex institutions like KEPSA, just for them to be able to advocate for the private sector. And then the other work stream is on enhancing export capability, so looking at challenges that private sector players face when they try to access markets, issues around logistics, issues around competitiveness, value addition. And then the most important and the one that we are very proud of is what we call a Women in Trade program that looks at greater inclusion of women in trade. So we've traditionally focused that program on cross-border traders. This was as a response to all the infrastructure work that we did at border crossings. So when we initially started about 12 years ago, there was the sense that a lot of the trade facilitation work benefits the bigger traders. So if I'm setting up a one-stop border post, it's people who own trucks that are benefiting. So how do we make sure that we are not leaving behind the underserved? How are we making sure that we're not leaving behind women traders? So we set up programs across the region, across all the EAC countries, looking at how do we move women towards formal trade. So a lot of them at that time were crossing borders through Panya routes. It wasn't safe, it was expensive, but it was the only option that they felt they had at that point. So the bulk of our work at that point was around sensitization and capacity building, getting them to have the right information on what is required for them to cross borders. There are a lot of incentives that have been put forth by government to ensure that small traders are able to benefit from trade agreements. So within the EAC, for example, if you're a small trader and you're moving goods less than $2,000, there's no tax that comes with that. A lot of the small cross-border traders don't even get to that amount, but they don't know about it. And unless you're formal, there is no way for you to take advantage of such incentives that have been put in place. So it was upon us to actually raise awareness on that. So we've had significant success in countries just because of cultural differences. There are some aspects that work, others don't. So in Rwanda, for example, the cooperative movement is very strong because it's governed well. There are policies that actually work. In Kenya and Uganda, DRC, we've struggled a bit just because of the accountability mechanism, whereby if there's an issue within a cooperative, what happens then? If a member, for example, takes a loan from the cooperative and disappears, what mechanism do they use to actually try and get back the money that they've lent, money that belongs to the other members? So as long as these structures are not in place, it makes it difficult for the collective movement to actually work. But that doesn't mean that the private sector players stop using these mechanisms. So in Uganda, for example, why cooperatives have not really been successful, associations have. So we've worked on establishing associations of women traders that then work on a membership basis. So they've changed and grown to the extent where they're also able to lend. And I think that comes to the informal lending structures that have already been discussed, is how do we then leverage these existing mechanisms to ensure that there's more inclusive lending to women. So there is a cooperative, an association of small cross-border traders in Uganda that started as an association. They work off the Busia border and have now registered as a SACCO. So the need that we see on the ground is these structures that are coming up organically. How do we make sure that we are supporting them to be sustainable, and also that they are able to meet the regulations that are set when it comes to lending? Because they emerge on a needs basis, but they then get a lot of buy-in because the members feel that they've contributed themselves, and therefore gives it a stronger case for them to actually succeed. But they need a lot of capacity building. So the way they structure their loans, for example, their mentality on, what's a risky member to lend to, the thresholds for lending, it's not their core bread and butter. So they're winging it, for lack of a better word. So building these instruments that already exist, whether it's from chamas or from SACCOs that are just emerging, how do we make them more sustainable and make them work for their members? I think for us, the other lesson that is also coming is that as Trademark, we've tried to ensure that interventions that we run are holistic. So we have a very strong trade focus. We look at it from a capacity building component, technical assistance, access to markets where we strengthen market linkages. We take traders directly to the market to build these networks. We've not traditionally focused on access to finance because we always assume there are other players in the market that are doing that. But what then happens is there is a disconnect between all the work, the beneficiaries that we've been able to reach. So at the moment, Trademark has close to 300,000 women traders that we work with. But that's as Trademark. So there are other development partners doing access to finance who would benefit from this network, but because we haven't really engaged, then that's a lost opportunity. Because we have a clear understanding of what their needs are, we bring in that technical assistant aspect that we invest in. So for example, as a bank, when you're going out to lend or you're hesitant about lending to a small trader because they are quote unquote risky, we have that background information, we've profiled them, we've segmented them, that we are able to share to help inform the type of products that financial service providers are able to come up with. So the need for partnership is something that I would really like to stress. And with the partnership that we have with Microsave and FSD, I think it's a good starting point for us to all build on our comparative advantage and see how we develop products that are fit for purpose for the markets that we work in. Then I think lastly is we also see the importance of access to market information. So not just markets of where I'm selling and buying, but also what are some of the services that exist in those markets. Logistics has been mentioned as a big concern, but there are opportunities where you're able to aggregate services to lower the cost. But unless this market information is there, it's very difficult to come up with solutions that then support small traders. So we've developed a digital platform that basically started as a way for us to share market information on requirements for crossing borders, prices, service providers. So if you want a tracker, for example, who's operating between Busia and Nairobi, that then you're able to get contacts on how to go about that and negotiate. And then as we were doing the user training assessment, we engaged women traders just to see, does this app work? Would this solution work for you? Two things that came up is, as much as digital is the way to go and to enhance scalability and sustainability, there is also a huge risk of it widening the digital gap and being a disadvantage to women. So unless we are able to incorporate digital training to enhance the capacity of women in addition to accessibility of digital services, then it will become a tool that not everyone has access to, not everyone is able to benefit from. Then the second thing, similar to the financial diaries, is when we went to engage the women, you would ask them things like, okay, what do you look for in an app? Very general things that you go and dig deeper and ask. So if you're looking to get a loan, what makes you think that that type of loan is exactly what you need? So going back to record keeping, them being able to actually put down transactions, because it's very easy for me to pick up as a trader what I feel is core expenditure. But there are those small things, airtime here, I've paid for a border guy to bring something from the market that I needed very fast. Those costs are normally not recorded. But at the end of the day, they have a huge implication when you aggregate those costs to the actual performance of a business. So, and the decision making that traders actually go into based on the records that they have. A lot of small traders keep these records in their heads. So when they go back to a banking, to their banks or to a service provider, explaining and downloading everything that is happening in their business becomes a challenge. So we put in a bookkeeping component within the platform. For us, it's to support the traders and also kind of drive traffic towards the app, but it's something that is functional, and if it works after the pilot phase, it's something that we're then able to partner and engage, say, microfinance or banks and say, look, this is a resource that you can use to actually kind of profile and tell the performance of businesses without necessarily having them show you their books that don't exist. So looking at how we leverage digital tools to actually provide visibility of business performance for small traders will be important. So I'll stop there and then I can answer any questions.
Thank you so much. It was very insightful and comprehensive around, and good to know that now Trademark is expanding beyond East Africa. So we'll now correct it and say Trademark Africa, not East Africa. Thank you so much for that response. Moving on to Tamara. So Tamara, the statement, the framing statement that we have is financial service providers struggle with a mix of demand side, supply side, policy and regulatory challenges in designing products for WMSEs operating from open air and cross-border market. So because you sit on Treasure Trove and because the role that FSDK plays in market facilitation and development, you have a good understanding of what are the prominent gaps that are there in demand and supply of financial products and services, and then what policy measures and technical support are required and are being carried out to resolve some of the policy and regulatory bottlenecks.
I wanted to start with a point that was made around sophistication. And you saw in the graphs about the various levels of sophistication. And one of the things that we've seen in some recent research that we've done in partnership with the Central Bank of Kenya and the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is to go back to the FinAccess recipients who are businesses, so micro and small and medium enterprises, and find out how their businesses were doing during COVID. And we've done several different waves of this to look at how they've done at different stages of recovering really from this COVID situation, which we are still in. Only 17% of those businesses have actually recovered at close to the same revenues they were making before COVID. 33% of those businesses have completely shut down. And the reason I started with sophistication is because what's interesting is those who were able to recover are actually the smaller, less sophisticated businesses. And that's because the sophisticated businesses perhaps had premises and they were no longer able to pay rent. They lost their rent. They maybe lost their access to market. They lost things. And so restarting was much more difficult. We heard from Anne and Alice, thank you, earlier that they were able to start their businesses with 60 bob and 2,000 bob. If you can start a business with that, you can restart it maybe with a little bit more than that, but close to that. Anataria and I had a chance of meeting some of the cross-border traders in Busia recently, and we worked together, Trademark and FSD, on a cash transfer program, which was transferring money to these small border traders to help them restart, recapitalize their businesses at just three transfers of 2,000 shillings each. And 93% of those who were able to receive those small cash transfers were able to restart their business, and not only restart, but actually increase their income from what they were doing before. And so this level of formality thing is really important. We also did a study with the SME Advisory Unit looking at Nairobi markets and this level of sophistication. And when people talk about formality, they talk about incentives, as Anataria mentioned, but they also tend to speak about formality as if it's a binary thing. A business is formal or it's informal, but that's not the case. There are various ways that businesses can become more informal or formal. And it might be that they have a business license. It might be that they're part of an association. It might be that they pay taxes, or as we saw, they pay bribes. And that's almost a formal thing, right? And so really better understanding what level of formality, and more importantly, what are the incentives for formality? And that drives me to a recent conversation that we had around the MSME Stabilization Fund, or Guarantee Facility here in Kenya. Bankers want to use that to help them de-risk lending to MSMEs. However, the rules for it are such that they have to be formal businesses, and it's actually very bureaucratic, as Dennis was talking about. And a recent event between the government and the banks to try to determine how can we better use this de-risking facility, the CEOs of the chair of KBA, who's also the CEO of CBA, and the CEO of KCB were making the case for being able to allow less formal businesses to access this MSME stabilization facility or guarantee fund. And so I think being creative about how the demand side and supply side can talk to each other. The demand side saying, we don't mind being formal if there's an incentive to do so, but can you meet us where we are? Can you help us grow so that then we'll have the incentives to formalize? I loved what Dennis said. So as you can tell, Dennis and I have known each other for a long time. We met 19 years ago on the top floor of Four Ways. And he and I had the privilege of seeing MSMEs queue up outside the management's office. Because at that time, they got very personalized attention and were able to personally advocate for their loans. Am I right? And that was their experience with being able to access credit. We no longer have that ability, and that is not scalable, right? And so how do we use the power of digitization, which several people have already talked about, to demystify, I loved that word, that so that we can still offer that personalized, custom credit and broader financial solutions to MSMEs through a digital channel, because we no longer can have everybody queue up outside the CEO's office. You talked about policy. I mentioned the guarantee facility, which is part of policy, but I think also understanding the financial sector laws and how those impact women, how those impact traders. We've recently did a gendered financial sector analysis to look at what are the laws that are on the books and or how are those being implemented that might disadvantage women and, of course, women traders. And we saw things that maybe some of which are gender blind. For example, we talked a lot about chamas and cooperatives. There's a law in the book that you cannot be on a committee of a cooperative unless you can read and write. That doesn't say anything about men or women, does it? Except that we know in Kenya that more women are illiterate than men, and yet they are powerful business women who probably could play a role in those cooperative committees and aren't being represented there because of this rule that's on the book. Or IDs are an issue where it is more likely for a boy birth to be registered formally than a girl birth. And so if you weren't registered when you were born, then getting that formal ID later is a lot more difficult. This also impacts youth. Anybody who's seen the FinAccess data will have seen that an increasing percentage of youth do not have a government ID. And if you do not have a government ID, you can't even open an account, much less qualify for credit. Maybe finally, the thing I'd like to talk about is this idea of understanding the customers. What I loved about the earlier conversation is everybody wanted to, they didn't think MicroSafe you'd done enough research. They were trying to do research themselves with the recipients that you've brought here today because they want to know. And I think financial sector leaders actually do want to know how to serve you. I mean, Dennis was trying to recruit you. Do more business with me and I'll give you more loans, you know? And that's great, and we should celebrate that. And I think what we're still finding is that there is a disconnect between that desire to serve the customers and the real barriers that prevent them from being able to de-risk and fully understand the market and the individuals to really provide the kind of customized solutions that you need. And so I think credit information sharing is one place that we have an opportunity here. Within Kenya, there are that process and that system's been developing for many years. And I think we heard several of the guests here talking about, oh, I don't want to be blacklisted, I don't want to be reported to the credit bureau. But a couple of years ago, I was working with a fintech who was trying to educate their customers about positive reporting to the credit bureau. And they were calling them and they were saying, look, when you repay this loan, we're going to report to the credit bureau, which means anybody who wants to lend to you can find out that you repaid us. And they got it so quick. They were like, oh, can you call my SACO and tell them that you've reported there? Because they could immediately see how a fuller picture of their financial life would help them potentially get a better credit limit at their SACO. And so I think what we need to have apps like what Anataria is talking about that capture these trader flows, things that you were talking about that really unveil the business that's happening, the business potential that MSMEs, that cross-border traders, that open-air traders have, and then help the financial service providers who want to serve these customers to really overcome the barriers that they face, even within regulation, to be able to fully serve them. And so I think that is all I wanted to say, except that there is a lot of research that is happening around MSMEs. There's segmentation research I just learned about but haven't seen. There's Small Firms Diaries, which Elizabeth is an advisor on, that's happening not only in Kenya but across the world. And so there's these opportunities to have research talk to each other and really that we can collectively learn together so that we can not only identify the problem, as Dr. Collins suggested, but figure out what those solutions are, because that right now is the gap. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very good insights. I think I really like the point on formalization, which has to be a bit tiered, bit nuanced, and good to hear that financial institutions are thinking about incorporating that in their methodology and not get into the binary black and white, 0 and 1 of whether you are formal or not. I'll break the protocol and ask one question. Having looked at the fin access over the years, we see that the financial health is deteriorating. There are reasons, we know. One reason is that there was interest rate cap, which just kind of ignored the entire micro and small enterprise sector. Then there came COVID. What advice as a market facilitator would you like to give to the financial institutions so that they start thinking about financial health of the borrowers as well?
When we present the FinAccess data, and you can see that financial inclusion has grown tremendously in Kenya from 2005 to 2021, we always barely even take a breath before also saying, and yet financial health has decreased during that same time. And so financial access is not enough. And I think what you've been hearing from everyone on the panel is that access is only good if it actually helps you do the things that you need to do. And so I think it's a real wake-up call for financial service providers to say, okay, people are accessing our services, but they're not good enough to help them manage day-to-day, invest in the future, and deal with risk. And so how can we understand the real needs and help people deal with those financial shocks that occur, that help them really seize those opportunities? And I don't have the answer, Anup. I wish I did. But what I'm really proud of Kenya for is that not only the financial sector regulators, the researchers, and the financial service providers are getting real about this question and trying to find out what's behind that. I do think that in the most recent survey, a big impact was the economic situation. And when the economic situation is worse, it's hard for anybody to be financially healthy. But still, it begs the question, why isn't finance more useful?
Thank you so much. So I'll move on to the financial service providers side now. The first question will be to Kevin, but before I ask this question to Kevin and then move on to Elizabeth, the statement that I have is the rapidly changing business environment has further increased challenges in meeting the financial needs of women, micro and small enterprises operating from open air and cross-border markets. We need multi-pronged strategies to facilitate their recovery and growth. Also to add to it, just like what Tamara said, the access problem has been resolved. How do we resolve the usage and quality of financial services problem? So Kevin, to you, the first question that I have is, how do we design better products that target the needs of open air and cross-border traders. And as we design and implement those products, it also takes care of the regulatory requirements that are there.
Thank you very much for that, Anup. So I'll start by just pointing out what the traders in the room spoke about when they were being asked questions. And the key insight I gained from listening was access and ease of access. So I'd rather go to a Shylock because they're there, rather than use any of the other solutions that may be available, say on the smartphone, MFI or bank. And so the question there is, what is the Shylock doing better than we are doing? And I think it may seem obvious, but it's actually a question that we as service providers need to ask ourselves and go deeply. I suspect it's Dennis's point of procedure, where because we are regulated in a specific way, there are certain minimum things that we must have as the lender to ensure that we're able to deliver the product, and Shylocks are not regulated. I think the other key reason that we may not be able to compete yet with a Shylock is because of the formalization issue, where we argue at different spaces that formalization in Kenya is to the detriment of the entrepreneur. Why? Because as soon as I start selling something, all my goods have a 16% VAT on them. Therefore, I'm uncompetitive in the marketplace. And so there's no real reason for me to become formal as an entrepreneur, regardless of the space I play in. So that's, I think, point number one. We need to find a way to solve for the VAT. Perhaps it's finding a way where the national tax policy has a moratorium for certain types of businesses not paying VAT so that they remain competitive. And as a result, then we, the financial institutions, can then cater to them in a more appropriate way. The second thing that I noted was we are not giving the amount required. So I need 10,000 shillings, I get 2,000. I need 100,000 shillings, no one will give me 100,000 shillings off the bat. And there's a word and phrase she used in Swahili that I really liked, which is, we will share the profit with them, right? And so it is approaching business with the informal trader as a partner to their business rather than a financial solutions provider or a loan provider. And so perhaps the solution here is, and maybe, to Tamara's point, not all these solutions are scalable, but will give us insight into how to get to a solution that is. And so it's sitting down for 3 to 6 months with the different traders as financial institutions in a given area. I loved your report because you said where the large and the small are, so we as institutions can then decide what type of actor we want to work with, and sort of take our time understanding the different businesses and sort of figuring out, okay, what do we need to capture when and where, and then give the financial solution as a partner. So that's point number 1 and 2. So the other thing that I realized was misinformation. And this is as a result of what's happening in the world today. There's a lot of stories, and the CRB one is a very popular one. As the chair of DLAC, one of the key messages that I've had to keep harping on in the media is that the CRB is not a bad thing. And Tamara spoke about it. The CRB is basically solving for the low trust society we have in this place. And our entrepreneur said it. She said, "Huku ni Kenya, kila Mkenya ni mjanja," meaning Kenyans are clever. Now, that means that we are in a low trust society, and we as entrepreneurs need to figure out how to solve that. And the CRB, the Credit Reference Bureau, is an attempt at solving that. And so we need to demystify what the Credit Reference Bureau is, its importance to the entrepreneur, and sort of give the roadmap of where it's going to take us. Because I think sometimes what is missed out is where we are going with the CRB. And we're always talking about how it's helping us now. And just for, I've been lending for nearly 17 years now. I started off nearly as a Shylock, so I know the whole procedure. And I remember in 2013, using a CRB report was essentially useless because there was no data. And so the first phase of the CRB working was populating it with data. Fast forward to 2022. In fact, let's go to 2021, and we had reached quite a great milestone where we had 12 million records. Then, of course, the media said 12 million people on CRB, which was wrong, right? 2.8 million people were in default. Everyone else had a loan, and it was a record. Unfortunately, because of that bad publicity and the lack of coordination, and no one's fault, the regulator then saw it fit to then take away the ability for small lenders, or what we call digital lenders or non-regulated lenders, from accessing and submitting data to the Bureau. What that did then created gaps. And so what you'll find now in 2022 is you're going to likely have serious gaps for the informal sector entrepreneur, because that data, that the lending data is not available, and it's sitting in silos in the large unregulated lenders, which is what's happening now. And so what you're starting to see, and I can tell you this as an insider, is that the algorithms of the large lenders are now way better than the average Shylock, for example. So we need to solve the CRB and, of course, educate the entrepreneur on its importance. And I think we need to sort of give a vision of what this CRB could be for us. Because low trust is a real problem, not just in entrepreneurship. I know as Kenyans you can relate. And then, of course, I think the final point is, the final 2 points are capital related. So the cost of capital for non-bank institutions is high, right? So I was telling Dennis just a few minutes ago, there's a perception that digital lenders and banks are fighting, but the truth is we are not. We actually need their lending, their money, because they lend to us in shilling. A lot of the people who give us money end up giving us in dollar or euro. And if you've been seeing the Forex, I am taking two risks. I'm taking a risk on borrowing in dollar and then taking a risk on lending to an informal sector entrepreneur who may or may not pay me because we are not using collateral. So we have to solve for that. Now, Tamara spoke about the credit scheme, and I was in that meeting as well. And as you recall, we also asked for digital lenders to be included. But I think what's more important is we need to figure out a way to ensure that it's all-inclusive. So it's not just the banks or the SACCOs or the chamas or the digital lenders solving for this cost of capital issue. It's sort of a holistic approach. And then finally, I think the obvious thing is tax. I'm not surprised that the cross-border traders said on the Kenya side, tax is higher. We all know that it is. We as digital lenders even have a court case at the moment where we're challenging a 20% excise tax. Excise, if you know, is a consumption tax. So it means that it's the one who consumes who incurs that tax. What happens is we, the digital lenders, take it out. So what has ended up happening because of these types of things is if you've borrowed 1,000 shillings, because I'm a formal entity, I have to deduct the 20% upfront. So I'm sending you, 800 shillings or 900 shillings, depending on the interest rate, which is not the amount, which goes back to that original point of this is not the amount I need, and therefore I'd rather go to a Shylock. And so DLAC, which is now, actually should have said this, we are now known as the Digital Financial Services Association of Kenya. You can ask me aside why we changed our name, but it was strategic. And our big sort of push for the next 2 years is a cohesive tax policy that ensures tax predictability, not just for us, but for the wider ecosystem. And then, of course, push for some tax incentives for industries like ours, which are the cutting edge of financial solutions. and could put Kenya on a very strategic place. And that's why we are big fans of Equity Bank, whose, their current strategy is building Africa back, in a sense. And so it's initiatives like a cohesive tax policy that would be very relevant to get Africa and Kenya where it needs to be. Those are my 5 points. Thanks.
Wow, great points. I mean, it resonates so much. We recently finished a work on looking at the Latin America markets and Asian markets and comparing it with African markets. The premise was, why did inclusive finance sector grow so much in Latin America and Asia, and why did it not grow in Africa? The two things that emerged from that, one was the population density in Asia and Latin America is significantly high, which means that you can put more brick and mortar branches and it becomes self-sustainable and you are able to, but the same, we don't have that kind of population density in Africa. So that pointed at the operational cost ratio. The second issue was the financial cost ratio. When we looked at the financial cost ratio, because of the low cost local currency denominated loans available in countries in Asia and Latin America, it grew. And if you don't believe me, just look at the charts of private sector credit as proportion of GDP for countries in Africa vis-a-vis countries in Asia and Latin America. Bangladesh, on an average in the last 20 years, has 44% of private sector credit to GDP. Kenya, which is the best of the lot, has 28%. Uganda is 13%. Nigeria is 11%, and so on. So great points. Thank you so much. Moving on. So we have Elizabeth. The question that I have is that you have been focusing on building the value proposition for women, micro and small enterprises. So what are the strategic imperatives of ABSA Group? And then when you started thinking about building the value proposition for women, micro and small enterprises, what were the opportunities that you considered and what are the challenges that you faced and how did you resolve those?
Thank you very much, Anup. Good afternoon, everyone. I know I'm standing in a very dangerous place between you and your lunch, so and also realize that a lot has been said by my colleagues sitting in the panel that really speaks to a lot that is going on in the environment in Kenya today. One thing as I begin my conversation is, as a bank, and I guess for everybody sitting in the room, one thing that we know is change is something that we've got to get used to. I mean, 3 years ago when we started off with COVID, we thought it was going to be a 3-week affair. Guess what? We are 3 years down the line and we're still struggling with COVID. As if that is not enough, then we have things like monkeypox and all other varieties coming along. If that's not enough, then we have wars that really we have no, input in, really affecting our business. And then the Kenyan way, every 5 years we have elections. So, we have not only a double whammy, triple whammy, quadruple whammy that we have to deal with. And sometimes when we sit back and we look at businesses, corporate businesses are affected by these. SMEs will be affected twice or thrice as much. And guess what? Women that support, businesses are even more affected, just by virtue of being cornerstones and pillars, of their homes and so on. So, when I think through this and I listen to Alice and I think Anne speaking, some of the things that they spoke to really speak to some of the troubles that we have, with dealing in an SME environment, but also in a women-led business environment. And they spoke about concentration risk. She talked about her product and being able to deliver product, a specific kind of product, and that creates a concentration risk. Talked about payment risks. I mean, you deliver, but you're not paid, or you're told you'll be paid after 30 days or whatever it is. That is a key problem. Then there's the Shylocks, and I'm not going to even go down that road because I know you've heard about it and a lot of other issues that come along with it. Access to finance, yes, it is an issue. You also spoke about, what about your staff, the quality of your goods, the staff that you have, how can you keep them permanent, how can you keep them paid? There were lots of issues that, Anne and Alice spoke to. And then, if that's not enough, they are mothers, they are wives, they support their homes. So all these things have to be addressed in a program that speaks to supporting women. So as a bank, one of the things that we did first, even as we transitioned, because ABSA Bank transitioned from Barclays into ABSA 3 years ago, and our key deliverable as we transitioned was to try and be as agile and as creative and make sure that we can address the issues that we found in the environment. So we sat back and said, we can't jump into this just saying that, we can see the figures, by different organizations saying that, women form 50% of our population. Women are, in education environment, they have the knowledge, but they're not playing in the right places. They're not in the boardrooms and all these things that were being spoken to. We sat back and said, we need to go and speak to the women ourselves. So across the 85 branches that we have in Kenya, we sat down with the women, and 4 things kept coming up over and over again, which then formed the 4 pillars of our proposition for women today. The first, and what was interesting, access to finance wasn't the first. Amazingly so, it wasn't the first. They wanted access to markets. They had the stuff. They wanted access to markets. The second one, they wanted access to networking opportunities. They wanted to find people like themselves who were able to transcend the tragedies or the challenges that they found in the environment. So access to marketing was the second one. The third one then was access to finance. And believe me, in the Kenyan environment today, we have a lot of training programs. I mean, we've been trained and overtrained, whether online, offline, even on the street. You're given pamphlets. You have a lot of training. But guess what? The fourth pillar was the access to mentoring and coaching. Women wanted, the access to be able to ask questions in a safe environment. They wanted to get answers, the way they were used to. And so the issues around unconscious biases that we find ourselves with kept coming up. So our proposition today at ABSA is based on those 4 pillars. We pride ourselves in being able to continuously have conversations because, again, guess what? The environment is dynamic. The things that we had 5 years ago are not the same things that we're hearing today. So our conversation, and I think our commitment to the environment today is, being able to constantly have those conversations. We ask for, partnerships with organizations like Chamber of Commerce, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, Association of Manufacturers. There are lots of organizations across the country. We've gone to churches because we do know that women have organizations in their churches. We have chamas that we speak to. And all we're saying is, women, come and let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation and start the journey of empowerment. Because, like I think the panelists have spoken to, this conversation is not just a financial conversation, it's a non-financial conversation as well. So why do I say non-financial conversation? During COVID, we also found that, we could push this agenda of, even bringing the financial interest rates down as far as we can. But if you don't have the information around business continuity planning, cash flow planning, these are all sounding like big animals to, SMEs who are not, they're not privy to how we operate. We don't speak the same language. We will be asking them for, projected cash flows. God knows, I can barely deal with what I have now. What about those projected? We would ask for, what is your BCP? And we are good at acronyms, huh? Business continuity planning being the basics, So for instance, if, a price of fuel goes up, what does that mean to your business? COVID hits you, you can't access your office. What does that mean to your business? What are the key things? And over and above that, we also spoke about interesting topics like taking your business online. We found ourselves in a situation where we couldn't access our offices. What then? We also tackled difficult topics like, I know Anne and also Alice spoke about when default takes place. Do we run away, switch off our phones, change our numbers, all those crazy things that we do? Why not come and speak to the banks and organizations? And a lot of the banks and organizations were able to then say, let's give you moratoriums. What do moratoriums mean? Those conversations then helped other businesses, take a breath, analyze, and figure out what's next. So what am I saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's opportunities in ABSA Bank, and I'm sure in a lot of financial organizations, if we engage, find time to, walk the journey. The other thing that we find a lot of the time is a lot of SMEs and women will come up with their fantastic ideas. Ladies, I'm telling you, we dream these ideas, we share them with our chamas, we come up with a proposal, whichever format it is, and we walk into the bank and then say, Nataka pesa, I want money, isn't it? But how about, did we walk that journey with you to prepare you for what we were looking for? And it breaks our hearts to then break, poke holes in a proposal that you have dreamt, slept, prayed about, and gathered your teams, around you to do the same. So what am I saying? We need to walk the journey from the time when you're thinking about ideas, give you the tools for which then we will have a conversation. By the time you come, the conversation is, do you have your documents? Everything is in place. Whether you have them in terms of, statements, whether it's the M-Pesa statements, whatever it is, we have prepared you to the point at which you will be able to engage with us better. So I think I'll pause there, but just to encourage the women, Alice and Anne, the one thing I picked out from you is that, I think, I forget his name now. Dennis said that, the power of being able to, develop ecosystem chains is around, if you empower one organization, you will probably get 5, down the road. But guess what? With women, you actually get 10, if not more. Women really, first of all, the people demand for us to go back and get 9 other people for us to be able to borrow, yeah? So those same 9 become the people that you share with. And the power of being able to support a woman is a great opportunity for us to develop our nation, because, we share and we are able to uplift each other. So kudos to you, Alice and Anne. Continue down that journey. I look at our panel here. There are 5 strong women and 2 brave men sitting amongst us. The stars are aligned. I think we have an opportunity to drive our business aggressively forward. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Super, thank you so much. Just to conclude, I'll give you all Twitter space, 240 characters to conclude, one sentence. Let's start from Tamara. Have a microphone? Yeah. So that the Twitterati world can pick it and put it there. Just add your name over there.
I got very little. You guys use this. I'm giving you time to think. Let's stop talking about this and let's do it.
Let's partner to understand those that we want to serve.
Let's put her at the center and build the solution around her.
I have a soundbite because of the that I must give. So for us right now, everything is tax. So let's solve for tax together, because once we solve that, I think we are gravy.
I think mine would be traders like Anne and Alice know what their businesses need. We just need to listen harder.
Great.
Wow, everything has been said, but over and above that, I think for Alice and Anne, dream big, work hard, stay focused, and we're here to support you.
Great, so thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, our extremely erudite and very articulate panelists, to them, and then we conclude. Thank you so much. So just before we break for lunch, I would like to thank a few people who have made this possible. I'll start first with Amani and Maria from Gates Foundation, who thought about this vision that let's focus on open air market and cross-border traders. So let's give a round of applause to them. Then our users. So we have thought of bringing the users on the table. So our users over here who opened their hearts and expressed their challenges, the financial and non-financial challenges that they face. Thank you so much for coming over and explaining your problems to us. Then the next one is a big one to Dennis. Dennis is over here for coining and phrasing. So he said conveniently expensive versus affordably bureaucratic. I would like to add 2 more. For the bankers who are here, I would like to add 2 more. One that I picked, as Kevin was talking about, which was uselessly small versus irresponsibly delivered. Think about it when you go. These are trade-offs. These are very important trade-offs to keep in mind. Then thank you to all the institutions who are presented here. Thank you for bringing your thoughts onto the table. And lastly, to my team who have been tirelessly and relentlessly working on making this program become a success. So thank you so much. I know I'm the last person between you and the lunch, so I will step aside. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Anu. And with that, we have come to the end of our program. So we are happy to release you to pick your lunch. We've prepared a little bit of lunch. It will be served, I believe, outside. But my colleagues who are outside will direct you in case I'm mistaken. As you walk outside, there'll be vouchers, so please pick a voucher, and then we'll see you at the lunch tables. Thank you, everyone. So I've just been corrected. It's Mosaic Restaurant downstairs. Enjoy your lunch.